minutes after 10 is the time. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. At least I hope you are. You may be aware we've had a few technical issues overnight, but hopefully they are now behind us. Once again, you find yourself reflecting upon how much we all rely upon the work and dedication of people whose names you will never hear in jingles or whose voices you will never hear spouting on the airwaves. But here we are. I don't know that I want you to ring in necessarily on this question. Actually, you can ring in on anything if you want, really. Why did we stop talking so much about Donald Trump? Why did we stop talking so much about Donald Trump? Do you remember? And by we, I don't just mean us, you and me. I mean all of us, really. I mean the national conversation. And I know the stories still appear, but, you know, there's a little column in The Guardian on page 8, right down the side of page 8. Trump says he'll bomb Oman if it gets in the way of his Iran deal. Oh, President of the United States of America vowing to bomb an ally in the Middle East, having bombed an enemy and made an absolute dog's dinner of it. He's now threatening to bomb an ally. If they get in the way of his attempts to end the US-Israel war on Iran. This because, as you probably know, but you might not, because why did we stop talking about Donald Trump? The 2-month window to negotiate peace with Iran expired, I think, yesterday or the day before. And his language as well is extraordinary. Keith, I should have told you, have we got a beep ready? Can you get me a beep ready before I tell you what Donald Trump actually had to say on the subject? 5 minutes after 10 is the time. If Oman tell me when you've got it. I don't want to run the risk of upsetting Ofcom. Or should we? I'll do my own. All right, a flip here, Nick. I'll do my own. I'll do it myself. You want a job doing? Just do it yourself. If Oman gets in the way, we'll bomb the bleep out of them, Trump told Fox News yesterday. He has actually done this before. And perhaps that's part of the reason why we don't really talk about this stuff anymore. The importance of Muscat, or Oman, as a back channel between Washington and Tehran is a baked-in diplomatic trope in the United States of America, a long-time US strategic partner. Technically, I don't know, do you use the word ally if treaties haven't been written, but a long-term strategic partner. And he's threatening to bomb them. At the same time, he has essentially turned his back on South Korea, which is an ally. Was that you, or was that completely random? That was you just practising, randomly. No, stop it now. By accident, or were you doing that on purpose? Because I'm already quite nervous about the technical issues that happened overnight. Stop it, Keith. Seriously. Also, you shouldn't swear at me like that. I'll report you to HR. Honest. All right, let's do it then. I think you've gone to all that trouble. Ready? If Oman gets in the way, we'll bomb the out of them, said Donald Trump last night. We should probably have these meetings before we come on air. Do you think? Should we? Nah, sack it. Let's just carry on as we are. Must be doing something right. South Korea conducting drills with the United States of America, not least because North Korea, their sworn enemy's nuclear ambitions are very well established. Donald Trump has said he's going to substantially reduce joint military exercises with South Korea because he's got such a good relationship with the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Right, stop. Because why don't we talk about Donald Trump anymore? Why don't we talk about what Donald Trump is doing to the world anymore? And I know the answer to that question. And I'm going to tell you what it is in a moment. But first, I want you to just let this percolate. I want you to let these 2-3 stories just percolate through your pre-Trump preconceptions. The way that you looked at the world at any point, really, between, 1945, would you say? That the post-war settlement? The Cold War, throughout that, the period that Francis Fukuyama thought had signalled the end of history before old enmities were resurrected. I mean, you just look at the world. You look at the tension between East and West, and you look at our greatest historic ally, the United States of America. And you reflect today upon the fact that he is threatening to bomb a strategic ally in the Middle East. I think we could probably all agree the world's tinderbox now for probably since the September the 11th terror attack upon New York, quite possibly before that, go back to Gulf War I maybe, I don't know, but the world's tinderbox, all of the death and bloodshed in the Middle East are rocks that get thrown into the pool and ripple right the way around the world. So he's threatening to bomb that ally. and then he is abandoning another ally because they haven't helped in his ludicrous war against Iran. And the reason I use the word percolate, there's two reasons. Number one, it's one of my all-time favourite words. I've only recently sort of started landing upon it as a way of describing the process of thinking about things and letting your thoughts filter through into deeper understanding, letting it percolate, reflecting on the importance of a moment. You let it percolate, it gets stronger. And that's one of the reasons why we've stopped talking about what Donald Trump is doing to the world, because we don't know. I mean, it's relatively easy to point out abject idiocy. And it's even fun, if you forgive me for using that word, about such serious matters. It's fun to do it when so many other people in public discourse are still pretending not to see the idiocy. You know, I mean, it was the phrase Trump derangement syndrome was a beautiful distillation of this, wasn't it? And that people would be pointing out how utterly awful Donald Trump is, obviously is. Obviously is a crucial word here. And other people in politics. Remember that Nigel Farage and Kemi Badenoch both wanted to join in with this war against Iran, when I don't think it's either arrogant or clairvoyant to say anybody thinking properly at the time could see that that would be a disaster. Because he is an idiot. And I don't know that that word is helpful in the context of political analysis normally, but I don't know what word you prefer. In fact, I'll ask you. My texts aren't working at the moment, so I don't know how you're going to be able to tell me what word you prefer, but I can't break the habit of a lifetime. I'm going to ask you to do things even though you can't currently do them. What word would you prefer? You can't tell me, by the way, but I'm still interested. Maybe use ESP. Maybe send me a sort of mental... You can use Blue Sky. You can use Blue Sky. At Mr. James OB on Blue Sky is the only sort of virtual line of communication. The phone lines are fine. Don't worry about that. So he's abandoned one ally. I recently asked the president of South Korea if they would like to join us in the denuclearization of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Right, pause, rewind. He told us that had already been achieved. Twice. Well, more than twice, but as part of two separate campaigns. The ongoing war against Iran, which was probably instigated by Benjamin Netanyahu, and the last time that Iran was attacked, when they both told us that all objectives had been achieved and Iran's nuclear capability had been completely eradicated. So he is withdrawing historic support for South Korea because South Korea refused to support the denuclearization of Iran, which he told them had already been achieved. Is that helping you understand why we don't talk about Donald Trump so much anymore? Because what is that? That's just a knot, right? That's a ball of wool. I'll run it by you again. He is withdrawing historic support from his ally South Korea and siding instead with the sworn enemy of the West, Kim Jong-un, because South Korea have refused to help with the so-called denuclearization of the Islamic Republic of Iran, which he has severally claimed had already been achieved. You know how much I like analogies. You're not going to find an analogy for this in your life, are you? What's that? You're sacking me because I haven't fixed a problem that you said had already been fixed. Okay, that doesn't seem fair, but I guess you're the boss. This comes less than 24 hours after he posted an old photograph of himself and Kim Jong-un from 2019, writing that the two were great friends. And then, somewhat comically, despite the unfriendly look on this particular picture. So, it has been explicitly linked, the refusal or the decision to withdraw from exercises with South Korea to South Korea's refusal to, quote, give us a little hand with Iran. And Oman, which remains a historic back channel to Tehran for Western interests, a back channel between Washington and Tehran, has been threatened with bombs, using swear words. What's on your list now? The swearing? The fact that the President of the United States of America can use such vulgar language, does that matter anymore? I mean, because I'm thinking about having a conversation later in the programme about the death of shame in the context of public behaviour, Wetherspoons pubs banning phones. And, you know, that kind of a little spark plug in my brain sometimes goes off unexpectedly. And is this part of the same process? The President of the United States of America using words I can't say on the radio to describe foreign policy that involves bombing an ally. That's the second thing that needs to percolate, isn't it? the President of the United States of America using words I can't say on British radio. I mean, I can physically say them. I'm not really supposed to. I'm not allowed to say them on British radio, to describe a foreign policy decision involving the abandonment of a historic ally, or, in the case of Oman, the threat of violence against them. On your toes, Keith. If Oman gets in the way, we'll bomb the out of them. Why don't we talk about this stuff as much as we used to? 03456060973. Answer, because it's too knotty. It's too fuzzy. It's you can't get a clear line in it. Once you've expended a couple of hours talking about what an idiot he is, how awful this is, what else do you do? Comprehension is the precursor for communication, right? You've got to understand. I know this slightly flies in the face of the traditional phone-in format, but you are supposed to understand things before you can talk about them. Or at least you're supposed to bring... In fact, all of the bad stuff happens when people who don't understand anything have their opinions treated as equal and opposite counterweights to the people who do. Climate change, anybody. Brexit, anybody. The list goes on. And so the reason why... I mean, listen, if you were part of the Trump derangement syndrome lobby, people pointing at anybody telling the truth or getting everything right and going, oh, no, you're a big smelly pants, Trump derangement syndrome, I know why you don't talk about it anymore. You're embarrassed. If you're capable of embarrassment, you're just embarrassed. We can't talk about this anymore. He's abandoning allies. He's threatening to bomb our allies. He's treating the United Kingdom with absolute contempt. Unless you're part, as I fear some members of Reform UK are, unless you're part of this confected culture war against London in particular and Europe in general, then you can't really talk about Donald Trump anymore, because all of your worst fears about being proved hideously wrong are coming true every day. I'll tell you again, he's threatening to bomb one ally and he's siding with an enemy against another. Why? Because they wouldn't join his war against Iran, which you cannot analyse intelligently, because he's told you that he's won it, he's told you that he's winning it, he's told you that he's about to win it, he's told you that he's negotiated a peace, he's told you that he's about to negotiate a peace, he's told you that they've got no nuclear capability, he's told you that he's not getting enough help dealing with their nuclear capability, he's told you that their nuclear capability has been eradicated, and he's told you that they have to carry on the war in order to eradicate it. He's told you that the Strait of Hormuz is open when it isn't, and that it's closed when it is. He's told you that the Strait of Hormuz is under his control, but there's no ships going through it, so if it is under his control, why... You see what I mean? You see what I mean? That's why it's on page 8 of The Guardian in a little side column that he's threatening to bomb Oman, because nobody knows what to say anymore. That's a theory that I'm running by you at the moment, and I could be wrong, but I'm speaking for myself. Nobody knows what to say anymore. Why do you think, and I can see he's on the switchboard already, why do you think we genuflect in the presence of Ash from Northampton? Because he knows what he's talking about on the, I mean, you know, on a lot of things, but on the very specifics, you know, of the Strait of Hormuz. As somebody whose maritime expertise he probably never thought would be so valuable. And he has been able, on the half a dozen occasions that he's rung us on that specific element of this conversation, he's been able to almost pour balm into our ears, because here, oh, God, here's someone who knows what he's talking about. Gobs on sticks, like me, often know what we're talking about until we don't. The challenge, of course, is to recognise when you don't know what you're talking about and stop talking. And that's why we're not talking about Donald Trump anymore. Because all of the people who normally rely upon their own, and I'm going to use words that you are more than welcome to object to, all of the people that usually rely upon their own intelligence and understanding of an issue before talking about it in the media or in real, maybe you're still talking about it in real life, in which case 0345. Not real life, this is real life, but you know what I mean. Off-air, IRL, 03456060973. The reason why we're not talking... Hey, Benjamin Netanyahu has just told Jared Kushner, Donald Trump's son-in-law, property developer son-in-law stroke peace envoy to the Middle East. You see what I mean? That madness sailed yonks ago. Process that, let that percolate. Donald Trump's peace envoy stroke son-in-law stroke property developer has just been told by Benjamin Netanyahu to sling his hook with the peace deal for Gaza that they've already told us was over the line, or was about to be over the line, or was definitely over the line, or would soon be over the line. How do you talk about that? Using intelligence and understanding. You can't, right? Somebody tells you that up is down and up is up, that black is white and black is black, that white is white and blue is blue is green and green is grey, and you think, right, now let's have a conversation about Donald Trump's attitude to colours. How do you do it? How do you do it? And then you note occasionally, I don't know why, maybe because it's not so hot today and your brain is working a little bit better than it was yesterday. You notice that he's threatening to bomb an ally again, and the most reassuring thing you can reach for is the fact that he's done it before and didn't. That's it. That's the reassuring response to Donald Trump's threat to bomb an ally. Oh, don't worry, he did it before and he didn't bomb them. South Korea. You're not helping us in our stupid war against Iran, our insane war, our child-killing exercise in Iran. You're not helping us, despite the fact that I can't tell you what you would actually be helping with, because I told you on Monday that it was all over, on Tuesday that we needed your help, on Wednesday that we didn't need your help because we were going to go it alone, on Thursday that a peace deal was just around the corner, and on Friday that we need the help of all our allies to eradicate the nuclear threat that we said last Tuesday had already been eradicated. How do you have an intelligent, informed conversation about this? Tell me, seriously, 0345 6060 973. What has happened to us, to you and to me, to explain why we don't talk about Donald Trump anymore? Much as we obviously should. What has happened? That's the question I didn't realise I was going to ask you. In fact, I think I said 10 minutes ago that was not the question I was going to ask you, but here we are in true Donald Trump style, asking you the question that 10 minutes ago I told you I wasn't going to ask you. Deep breath, anyone? Are you still with me at the back? Because the question I was going to ask you, make it make sense. Is that the same question, Keith? Make it make sense. 0345 6060 973. We want to make it personal? Why don't we talk about this anymore on anything like this? And by we, I mean public discourse. But of course, if you are talking about it, then tell me why and tell me what you're saying. Why don't we talk about this stuff anymore? It's worse than ever. And the conversation is quieter than I can remember it ever being. At Gaza, the West Bank, Iran, South Korea, Oman. 0345 6060 973. And then the second bit of the question, and this is more political than personal, then I'll tell you what, if you can do this, I'll give you the money myself. Make it make sense. Make Donald Trump's behaviour make sense. And I don't think you can, and that's probably part of the answer to the first question. Why aren't we talking about it more? Oh, well, it's obvious, James. We can't make sense of it. But we have to keep trying. That's why there are 2 questions on the board this morning. Why aren't we talking about Donald Trump as much as we used to, as much as we should do? And make it make sense. Make him make sense. Hit the numbers now. You will get through.
James O'Brien on LBC.
23 minutes after 10. My texts aren't working, but my personal Blue Sky account is up. I could add another question to the mix if I was so minded. Morning, James. I was speaking to a friend yesterday and he said he's just ignoring him until he's out and then the war will be over and the world will go back to normal again. Says Mark in Cornwall, who I hope is right, but I fear is not. We're just ignoring him because we're waiting until he goes away. Is that what we're doing? Is that what you're doing? Okay. And Heavy says, I'm listening to a series on Vietnam at the moment, and the commies, in quotes, used to be the USA's sworn enemies. Now, North Korea must be a commercial opportunity for Trump, and his allies mean nothing to him. I don't know. Really? A commercial opportunity in North Korea? I can't quite see that happening, but then again, they were going to open a resort in Gaza not long ago, weren't they? 24 minutes after 10. Here he is. Get on your knees and genuflect. Ash is in Northampton. Ash, what's going on?
Good morning, James.
Hello.
First, I want to say thank you very much last week for mentioning the emergency fares.
Oh, thank you very much for reminding me to, because, of course, we were talking about the USS Abraham Lincoln, where mental health crises are now almost reaching contagious levels, and you reminded us that there are merchant seamen in that part of the world who have been similarly, marooned, I suppose, is the word that you use, even though they're still on their ships.
Yeah, that would be the correct term. So, coming to as someone who is cataloguing this almost obsessively, for obvious reasons, it's very difficult to. Do you know what? I sympathise a lot with real journalists on this, because you have to look at what's at stake here, Every time Donald Trump makes a huge statement, what happens to the markets and what happens to the price of oil? They shift. So let's take someone like, say you're one of the journalists at the Financial Times. What happens then if you start speculating about what Trump's going to say next and what's going to happen? You could open yourself up, even if you're just speculating, to possible accusations that you're trying to move the markets yourself.
Okay. And I think this might be quite a niche. I could be wrong. I often am. This could be quite a niche observation. I don't know that it certainly doesn't inform the reasons why we've stopped talking about Donald Trump as much as we used to.
It is, but that covers the top level journalism, which is what you would expect to be covering. Like if you go back to sort of like the...
Hang on a minute. What are you trying to say?
But there's only so much bandwidth, right?
Yes, of course.
So in the middle of a climate crisis, in the middle of change of PM, in the middle of, everything else that is going on, how much bandwidth do you have to discuss these things? So unless you're actually cataloguing them, most people don't know a ship was hit this morning in Hormuz. There is a sailor currently in a critical condition. We don't know much more.
Whose ship was it?
No details yet.
Okay.
Of whose it was.
No, it's a great example of something that would have been a big news story not that long ago.
Yeah. How much have you heard about the 800,000 barrels worth of oil that's currently leaking into the sea off the south coast of Oman?
Nothing.
Because of one of these attacks. There is only so much bandwidth that people can have for this. And then, I also sympathise with people who are doing the discussion level, so cover top level journalism.
What should we call it, Ash? Should we call it the second tier of journalism?
Public reaction to journalism, maybe?
Yeah.
So
public discourse.
How do we cover this in a way that makes sense when every 10 minutes something can change because Donald Trump changes his mind or an ally? And, who do you trust?
Oh, so anything you say is only relevant until the next time Donald Trump opens his mouth, at which point the last thing you said is actually not just irrelevant, but in some sense it's wrong. Yes,
it'll just make you look foolish. And if you're honest, if you're an honest person trying to do it, it's very, very difficult.
So you stop?
Or, like me, you just obsess over it and ignore that. But that's, again, a very niche...
Yeah, but that is literally your world, so you can't ignore it. It would be, I don't know, it'd be like Simon Calder ignoring travel or Alan Titchmarsh ignoring gardening. It's your world. You are bound to be glued to it. But
precisely.
But the bigger question, I mean, that's a really... So it is the knot that I talked about. It's if you're in the business of unravelling knots, there comes a point in your life when you realise the knot in front of you is either unravelable or possibly not even a knot, to go all philosophical for a moment. That Donald Trump's behaviour is not something that we can unravel. We can never come up with a neat or even a complicated account of what he is doing, because the minute we publish our complicated or simple account of what Donald Trump is doing it and why, he will literally do the polar opposite for reasons that make no sense at all under the lens or through the lens of the analysis that the cleverest people in the business have just undertaken.
Precisely. And then what are you left with? You're then left with, I'm having to look at sources from Iran as being factual.
Yeah.
Not propaganda. I'm having to say, right, well, and then, what Donald Trump really doesn't help with is when he attacks someone like South Korea or Oman with words, the only people I've been able to trust explicitly throughout this entire process has been the Omani Foreign Ministry and the Pakistani Foreign Ministry,
right?
Who both have done excellent work in trying to get as much information out as possible. But they shut down when Trump does this because, again, diplomacy takes over. You try to apply the normal rules.
Yeah, so it's a combination of diplomacy and sense. So they can't really speak sense because Trump could render their sense nonsense the next time he opens his mouth, and diplomacy demands that they can't even point that out.
Precisely, which is why I've spent all of my time trying to ignore the diplomacy level and just looking purely at the operational figures. How many ships are going through? How are the companies and the insurance agencies responding to everything? And that's the only way you can really do it. And that's not very exciting for anybody that's not, me.
Well, I mean, give us the headlines from that perspective while you're here.
So we're down to pretty much zero transits through Hormuz, but that doesn't account for AIS being turned off so that you can't track them.
Okay.
As I say, there was a ship attacked and hit this morning.
But hit by Iran? Or do we not even know that at the moment?
We don't know, but it was in Omani waters. So
right.
and it was attempting to transit out so we can make inferences, but nobody's taking responsibility.
Okay.
The Red Sea is in pretty much complete lockdown. The Houthis have been attacking ports in the Red Sea that are sympathetic to Saudi Arabia. They've also been attacking vessels that have been going through. So the Red Sea, this morning China put out that they're going to look at opening the Russian ice passage to get ships through to Europe. So going over the top of the Antarctic. The reason we haven't done that in the past is A, because it's quite a dangerous thing to do, and B, think about what would happen with the 800,000 barrels of oil currently leaking into Oman if that happened in the Arctic. Like, the fallout would be incredible.
It's interesting that you say that, because my final question, I'm quite late for the news, is...
Sorry?
No, don't apologise. What would be this kind of event horizon? Because, there's a lot of things that you said there that I've probably already forgotten. China looking to open up the ice passage through to Europe, through Russia to Europe, is that right?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, okay. You've got a ship has been attacked in the Strait of Hormuz this morning. We don't know whose ship it is, and we don't know who attacked them because all of the tracking systems are off for reasons. You've got the fact that journalists can't talk about this because it might look like they were trying to manipulate markets. Every time they try and second-guess Donald Trump, whose every utterance changes the markets, they themselves leave themselves open to the accusation of trying to manipulate the markets. And the crucial point, a point about today's programme, and I think for once you haven't actually shut down the whole phone-in with your expert analysis, because as you say, it's confined to a very specific and clear area. But the whole sort of conversation is contingent on not knowing what is going on. And then you've just told us 3 or 4 things that would once have really mattered. I started with South Korea being abandoned and Oman being threatened. Oman is not just an ally historically of the United States, but it's I think it's the only foreign export customer for the Challenger 2 battle tank, which is Britain's main battle tank. We signed a big thing in 2022 on defence. There are probably British soldiers in Oman at the moment training Omani military, and the United States of America is threatening to bomb them. So all of the stuff that we don't understand, can you think of, and no pressure if you can't, because I'm damned if I can, a kind of event like the wildfires changing the way that we feel, not just the way that we think about climate change. I talked yesterday about how it moves from the brain to the stomach. You feel it in your guts. Is there anything that could happen here, in Hormuz particularly, that would change the way everybody else feels about it? And you'd have to abandon the difficulties of having the conversation and refocus your attention on Donald Trump in particular and the bigger picture in general. What might be the catastrophe, the crisis, the wildfire?
I think it's going to be a secondary event, not something that happens in Hormuz. I think that's too removed from people's sort of psyche to be able to do it. I'm looking currently at the nitrates and fertilizer markets and the way that that's moving. And you're talking about catastrophe level events of farm crops failing. We're talking,
I don't even know if we'd join the dots then, mate. It's like you can't ignore the weather when the weather is setting fire to the New Forest. If the crops fail, I don't know that we can take people all the way back to Donald Trump and Iran.
Yeah, and that's the problem. How do you keep the fire going, so to speak, so that people can understand that the reason food prices are spiking over winter is because of this.
And and I don't know what percentage of the UK media was until relatively recently singing Donald Trump's praises or insisting that British politicians, British Prime Ministers, Keir Starmer no less, should have actually joined in this ridiculous war. And that is part of the betrayal of the British public, isn't it? That's part of the reason why the British public isn't being told the things that it should be told. Because the organs that you would ordinarily rely on for at least a cursory understanding of what's going on in the world have sold their souls to the orange, to the mango Mussolini. Ash, you're a genius. Thank you, mate. Stay safe. It's 10:35. Dominic Ellis has your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
10:38. We come off the back of a chat, a more illuminating chat than I think you're going to hear anywhere else at the moment, about the Strait of Hormuz in particular and the difficulty of discussing Donald Trump in general. We head straight into a news bulletin, and Vladimir Putin is threatening Britain. What are we going to talk about? The hosepipe ban? I am literally planning at 12 o'clock today to ask you whether you've ever been attacked by a wild animal. And I can defend myself against the allegation of triviality, because right now I'm trying to talk about Donald Trump. But I'm actually trying to talk about how difficult it is to talk about Donald Trump. Largely because if you put together a PhD thesis on what he's doing at the moment with regard to Oman, South Korea or Iran, or Greenland. Remember, Greenland, that'll be back around soon, like Tom Jones singing Delilah at the end of a greatest hits tour. You put together the PhD thesis on why he's doing what he's doing, he would literally come out the next day and either say or do the polar opposite, or threaten to do the thing that he insisted the day before he would never do. I don't know enough about psychology to understand why people in my profession who were blowing smoke up his backside until relatively recently can't now admit that they were wrong. They will just stay silent. But what's really scary is that everybody who's being proved completely right about Donald Trump is struggling to know what to say. I catalogue the chaos, catalogue the catastrophe, itemise the idiocy, all of those things. I can't do that all day, every day. So, how do we get the conversation back on track? How do we properly reflect the importance of moments like these? Donald Trump is threatening to bomb our ally in the Middle East, Oman. Donald Trump has abandoned his ally in the Middle East, South Korea, and sided instead with North Korea, a communist dictatorship. How do you get the conversation back where it should be? Answer, you don't. You just sit and wait till he's gone and then hope that everything gets back to normal. I don't know. 10:40 is the time. Gay's in Bath. Gay, what would you like to say?
Hello. I'm very glad to speak to you again, and glad that you're covering this because it is so important. I think also Ash ought to be assured that he can talk about company, worrying about inflating the market, because Trump himself is selling for $100,000 a month entrance to a Ponzi scheme so that people can get advance notice on what the markets are going to do.
This is, I think, linked to his social media platform, and it invites subscribers to get a nanosecond, because something's happened to my online alarm bell as well, because normally I'd be thinking, oh, steady on a minute, you can't say that, we need to double check. But this is that you pay $100,000 and you get a few nanoseconds early of what his next announcement will be, which is literally like announcing these announcements are going to move the markets, get in there early and fill your boots, lads. That's actually just I've read about that. I don't know if it's up and running yet, but it's certainly been announced.
I expect so.
And that's a perfect example, Gay. How do you even do that in a normal universe with a moral compass, or my footballification fascination, even if you're playing against the team that is your sworn enemy or derby enemies of old, they're not playing by the offside rule. They're not stopping when the referee blows his whistle. They've got 14 men on the pitch and 8 goalkeepers. How do you commentate on that?
While you were talking to Ash, I sort of just scribbled down a couple of things. And in fact, we are so absorbed by the fires and everything in this country that we can't. That is our priority. But another thing that Trump is doing the last few hours, that he wants to rewrite the rules for. Well, I don't really like Iran anymore. I want to nuke them.
Yeah.
So what do you do about that?
It's like it's a toddler. I don't know what you do. You're supposed to be telling me. What I mean, how do you do the news or news analysis when he will, in the space of a week, offer up 5 different descriptions of exactly the same scenario?
Well, yesterday he blew up a Panamanian oil tanker, and Panama is an ally, is a friend. if he's not happy, he's dabbling with the Kennedy Center again, God forbid. He's not happy pulling down the White House and the reflecting pool. And trying to get his money back from E. Jean Carroll through the
you're still paying
Supreme
a lot of
Court.
attention, aren't you?
Oh, good God, yes.
I think it was a week ago, the Panamanian tanker. I could be wrong, but
I thought it was yesterday.
I don't think it was yesterday.
Another thing for Ash
disabled it. They disabled it. I don't think they blew it up after it violated a naval blockade in the Strait of Hormuz, which he told us yesterday is still open. I mean, what do you even do with this information?
I don't know. But also, I was listening to Mr. Global yesterday, who is an absolute expert on these things, and he was saying with oil, with regard to Ash's oil leak, that would you, if you dropped your wallet on the floor and all the money went everywhere, would you walk away from it? No, you'd pick it up. So you can there would probably be damage, but you wouldn't let that oil go to waste.
So what's the takeaway from that, Mr. Global? For people who don't know, is it's not what we call the boss here at Global Radio. It's Matt Randolph, who's an energy expert with decades of experience in the sector. What's the takeaway from the observation about leaving money on the floor? Forgive me.
Well, what you would do is if there's any oil from these tankers that spills, then it's like when the Torrey Canyon went down, another oil tanker, as I'm showing how old I am, that there are ways of recapturing or scooping up the oil, and because this is crude oil.
But they're not doing that.
Well, they haven't had a chance yet.
Oh, I see what you mean. Oh, okay. Yeah, all right. So it's more of a watching brief than a kind of zinging insight. But yeah, you touch on loads of things, and you speak as someone who is. I think I was aware of most of the things you mentioned. I don't think I was aware of the Panamanian oil tanker being disabled by the US. I certainly wasn't aware of 2 or 3 of the things that Ash told me. And I do this for a living. This isn't an exercise in self-flagellation. It's just an illustration of the cessation of conversation, the dialing down of conversation. And I think it is actually quite an easy one to answer in the first instance. Why aren't you talking about that? Because I don't know what's going on. And I don't think anyone can really tell me what's going on. And that might be the plan. The Steve Bannon line about flooding the zone. You used to think it was culture wars and racism and all that kind of thing. And, there are some good people on both sides when the Nazis are literally on one side. And you think it's flooding the zone. You can't actually analyse anything that he's doing. But I used to think it was just the culture wars. But it's not, is it? And then that other voice in your head starts going, there's no plan, James. It's just a raging narcissist doing whatever he wants to do. It's like a toddler, like a 10-foot toddler who's got 10 mummies and nannies telling him all the time he can have whatever he wants. And I want to bomb Iran. Okay, there you go, have some bombs. I want to bomb Oman. Okay. And first term, Trump, there'd be people in the room saying, don't be ridiculous, eat your greens. Don't be ridiculous, you can't have spangles for dinner. Don't be ridiculous. There are rules, there are alliances, there are treaties, there are common decency to be observed. Second term, Volodymyr Zelensky walks into the White House and some sycophantic Fruit Loop attacks him for not wearing a suit, and all Trump's other sycophants sit there stroking their thighs and laughing at Volodymyr Zelensky. And that feels like 100 years ago. That should have been a bomb going off in our collective consciousnesses. But it's not, because our zone has been flooded. Not just the media zone, not just the diplomatic zone, not just the political zone, but your mental zone, my mental zone, has been completely flooded. And we're just bobbing about, not paying much attention at all to what is going on beneath us, because we're too busy just trying to keep our own heads above water. And do you know what you do when you find yourself in that situation? You switch off. Why am I going to talk about it? I'm never going to understand where all this water has come from. Look how much water there is. It's come from 1 million different sources. That's what he's done. He's flooded your mental zone. This being the phone-in programme that it is, how do you unflood it? 0345 6060 973. And I'll tell you what, if you're ringing on that, I'll give you the money myself.
James O'Brien on LBC.
11 is the time. Phillips O'Brien, great friend of the programme, as you know, up at St Andrews University, no relation that we're aware of. He made a point about 24 hours ago that is really interesting. As we were thinking of getting him on today to talk about the Russia thing, to talk about Putin's sabre-rattling with regards to the deployment of British-made drones in Russia. But the clever money tells me that that's not actually quite a big deal. As big a deal as many of the headline writers and and politicians are stating or claiming today. But listen to this from Phillips yesterday. People are overlooking one really important development happening in those states which were loyal and helpful US allies. It is not that the US is not to be trusted, is spiteful, and is now working with Russia, North Korea, etc. The real story is that these states are discovering that the USA is much weaker than they thought. Other reports in the States about them running out of weapons. Pete Hegseth is still the Secretary of State for Defence. Pete Hegseth, a very odd former television presenter. That's full Hunger Games, right? Make him Secretary of State for Defence. And he's not even the maddest appointment in the administration. The madministration, you might call it. But that is incredible. I mean, the whole hegemony of the Middle East depends upon the idea that if you upset America, then you will be toast. You know, I guess Saddam Hussein learned that lesson most recently. The Taliban arguably offered up a counterpoint to that, but only after decades of combat and conflict and death. The United States is not just an unreliable ally, but much, much more importantly, it is not as valuable an ally. Not just as it used to be, but as everybody until very recently thought that it was. Iran are laughing at America at the moment. And of course, the Revolutionary Guard and the Ayatollahs don't particularly care about the fate of Iranian people. So they are not going to be paused or have their hands stayed by attacks upon their own territory. They're interested, as all dictatorships are, only in sustaining their own power. Just like Kim Jong-un, who Donald Trump is cozying up to at the expense of the democratically elected ally, South Korea. So that again is part of the answer to the question of why we're not talking about it. Because if America is no longer as powerful an ally as it always has been, the largest military in the world, not only in the hands of a petulant toddler, but also diminishing before our very eyes while the Pentagon, the Secretary of State, Congress, the media, all bow and scrape and beg for favour, as one of Phillips's correspondents has stated. How do you analyse that? It's a bit like trying to... When did Gibbons write the Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, Keith? I'm going to give you a clue. He didn't write it while it was happening. That might not be quite as profound an observation as I hope, but I hope it's in the top sort of 60 to 70 percentile. You can't write about the decline of the Roman Empire while it's happening. You have to wait hundreds of years. It is 10:53. Sadia is in, here we go, Hoofddorp in the Netherlands. Sadia, what would you like to say?
Hello. So when it comes to the topic of Donald Trump and how he's presented in the media and how we collectively receive him,
yes.
It's quite interesting to know that the Washington Post published an article, I think in a few years ago, but they found that Donald Trump had lied over 30,000 times in his first presidency.
It was an ongoing tally, I think, wasn't it? I think they kept reviewing it and adding to it, and you're right. The final total was well into the tens of thousands. Incredible. Small lies, big lies, medium lies, white lies, black lies, grey lies, all sorts of lies, all the lies.
So that averages to about more than 20 lies per day coming from the most powerful political figure in the world. And I think that's led to a sense of desensitization as well, because not only is what he does and says shocking, he also lies quite a lot. So I think it's just reached a point.
I don't know. Are the Dutch famous for their understatement? He lies quite a lot. He certainly does.
I mean, the Dutch are famous for their directness.
Well, there you go.
So Donald Trump, I think it's just become normal, and, we expect this from him. And I think this is quite pertinent also due to what's happened with that Cambridge academic, Jason Arde.
You've taken the words straight out of my mouth, actually. I was going to say it's a good job he wasn't a black Cambridge professor.
Exactly. So as well as just the desensitization fact, it's also the fact of who he is. He is a white, wealthy, successful businessman, and therefore I think he's subject to less scrutiny. I think somewhere he's seen as being inherently trustworthy.
Also, he can hurt people. He has power. He can hurt people, and Jason Arde would never have harmed a fly. So, the self-interest and sycophancy are often hand in hand. How do we unflood the zone? There's another area of expertise for the Dutch. How do we unflood the territory that Donald Trump has flooded with lies and depravity?
I think that would be quite difficult because he's already established himself as that kind of person who is confident about what he does and says, and he acts with impunity. I think another reason as to why some people like him so much is he presents himself as a transparent figure. It's like it or leave it. This is what you get, essentially. So while he's in power, he will do what he wants.
And if you displease me, I will hurt you.
Exactly. I think that shows another kind of double standard, because when America makes a decision or a threat like that, it's not seen as being terroristic, whereas when that kind of attitude or behavior is returned from, for example, the Middle East, it's immediately labeled as being, terrorist activity.
Yeah, of course. The policing of language we picked up by a caller yesterday at a time of international peril is hideous to observe quite often. What a brilliant observation. Thank you, Sadia. 10:57 is the time, and we move effortlessly from the Netherlands to Stockholm in Sweden. Peter, what would you like to say?
Yes, hi, James. Pleasure to speak with you again. I'm a little bit nervous, to be honest. I have quite a few things to get off my chest.
Well, you've only got 2 minutes. I don't mean to sound brusque.
All right. Let's see here. Well, I think you asked 2 questions at the top. Why do we not speak about it more?
Yeah.
I think the short answer there is just a sense of futility.
Yes.
The second part is what I wanted to spend my time on, and I'll try to be brief.
Good.
I think it has to do with wealth absolutism. I think this is the mortar. You asked at the beginning of the year, we have so many bricks, but we don't seem to have the mortar to understand the full picture.
Yeah.
I think
Did I say that?
You did say it, and it made me think a lot about this topic about Trump,
good.
and it even made me want to write a series of essays on this topic, because I think it sounds simplistic, but if you think about it, it's similar to what Charlie Munger said: "Show me the incentives, and I'll show you the outcome."
Yeah.
I think what you can see with Trump and things that surround themselves or defend him, even somehow maybe the turkeys that vote for Christmas, I think all of them, they get something out of this. And for Trump and the inner circle, it's getting money, basically. It's enriching oneself. I think we don't need to spend too much time on this, how it has helped Trump personally. But I think if you look at the companies, the people, the Musks and the Peter Thiels, and many of these, what they have against Europe, for instance, and in the FT you have an article yesterday say why MAGA came for Europe. One of the people there says it's profit. It has nothing to do with ideology, and I firmly believe in this. If you think Europe, what kind of threat it poses to the US, if you think about the corporate, not all of them, of course, but Europe comes after the AI companies and wants to guardrail that. They come after social media companies and want to regulate it more. It has more attacks on market abuse.
So they're terrified of regulation?
Yes, and also not only that, I think why do they attack UK and Europe? I think Elon Musk said it in his interview with The Economist. He said that the reason the immigrants are coming to Europe is because of the welfare that Europe provides. Well, in the same interview earlier on, he said, how do we solve that AI will take away jobs? Well, the Treasury can write checks. Well, what will that mean in terms of
welfare
how
for
attractive
everybody.
the US? Exactly. Wouldn't that be even worse?
So I like your answer because it probably fills more of the space created by the question than any other individual or single answer available. And it speaks to psychology as well, doesn't it? Because most human beings do not understand epic greed. They do not understand how the richest men in the world, and they are usually men, can want to be richer. And yet, throughout history, the cataclysms happen, the man-made cataclysms happen when the richest men in the world want to be richer. You know, whether you're talking about the dissolution of the monasteries or whether you're talking about the dissolution of the United States of America, the richest men in the world are getting richer. And you would put your house on it being pretty close to the beginning, the middle, and the end of this story? Just that.
I would. I think when I said wealth absolutism, what I meant by
I get it. I like it.
Yeah,
we want all the money. We want all the money.
It's more important than anything that I can rather sacrifice some other person's well-being just in order to fill my own pocket. And you can see it clearly.
And every appointment, every intervention, every backtrack, every reverse ferret is seen through the lens of self-enrichment, and you're going to come much closer to, as I say, filling all of the space created by the question than you are with any other single answer. Even the flooding of the zone, of course, becomes part of the process of self-enrichment. How on earth can I pick your pocket? How can I pick your pocket right now? How can I pick your pocket? Look over there! Look over there! Got it. Thank you. Got your wallet. It's 11:01.
James O'Brien on LBC.
5 minutes after 11 is the time. I'm not sure that we've had a phone-in involving the word Wetherspoons since the dog days of Brexit, have we? I can't never remember the fellow's name. Tim Martin. I spent about a year and a half calling him Tim Wetherspoon before anybody corrected me. Do you know why the pub is called Wetherspoons, Keith? Do you know this? It was a teacher who said he'd come to nothing, so he decided to call it Wetherspoons. Who did I have on Full Disclosure recently who had a similar experience and still remembered the name of the teacher that had told them? So on Full Disclosure, quite often people mention... Full Disclosure is my long-form interview series. Sounds a bit pompous, doesn't it, long-form? They're an hour long. It's a series of hour-long interviews. And quite often I love it when guests remember the name of a teacher who changed their lives, a truly inspiring intervention, the person that introduced them, for example, to drama or who recognised their musical talent. I'm just going to check my calendar while you talk among yourselves and try to remember who was on. I've done someone very, very recently, and they were still nursing great negativity towards a teacher who had told them that they were going to come to nothing. I think it might have been Alexi Sale, actually. Anyway, 6 minutes after 11 is the time. I don't think we've had a conversation that involves Wetherspoons for quite a long time, and we're going to today because of the story that you just heard in Dominic's news bulletin. It's not just about Wetherspoons banning its customers from playing music out loud or taking calls on speaker, saying the noise was an increasing problem driving people nuts. It's about society in general. There's a rather good piece in the Telegraph today by James Kirkup. I hate it when that happens. There I am, opening up the comment pages of the Daily Telegraph, looking for an unhinged headline that we can all have a giggle with. Where's Alistair Heath when you need him? And instead stumbling across a really nicely and wisely argued position about antisocial behaviour and the relationship of that kind of behaviour with shame. Why should I mean, he actually goes for quite a list. Shoplifting, playing music from a phone on public transport without headphones, letting children skip school, riding electric bikes through red lights and on pavements, using temporary barbecues during a heatwave and starting wildfires. And Kirkup writes, what unites these problems is not a lack of enforcement by the authorities. It is always possible for a modern state to crack down on behaviour that is deemed unacceptable. In all of those cases, it is common to argue that a particular behaviour has become common because of weak enforcement, but that's not it. I think that the recent miserable rise in shoplifting is more about a weakening of social norms than a weakening of policing. So, I mean, you can add stuff to that list if you want. Don't necessarily ring me just to add stuff to that list. But the people who are subconsciously thinking to themselves, why would I bother with headphones when listening to loud music on the train? Why can't I ride my bike on the pavement? Everyone else does it. It's a form of selfishness that Kirkup, as I say, a very clever piece, links to liberalism, the kind of cult of the individual, excessive individualism. And nobody else matters, only me. Who just thought of Donald Trump? I'm not even joking, actually. Who just thought... I told you my spark plugs go off unexpectedly sometimes. I mean, you say to someone riding their bike on a bicycle, riding their bicycle on a pavement, oh, you shouldn't be doing that, when the president of the free world, the leader of the free world, is threatening to bomb people for looking at him the wrong way. Anyway. He also talks about morality and shame. And here's a really interesting question, right? And I may even ask you to ring in and answer it. Who knows? It's only 9 minutes past the hour. Why don't you do these things? Why don't you, particularly in the hot weather and it's quite sweaty, and the last thing you want to do is hold a hot phone next to your head on the bus, why don't you put it on flame? Why don't you put it on speaker? okay? Why don't you get one of those electric bikes, either buy it yourself or rent it, and bomb up and down the pavement near your house, because you'll get where you want to get a lot quicker. It'll be a lot easier. Why don't you do it? Why haven't you used a disposable barbecue since? I mean, I heard some people complaining about that alert that went off the other night that was simply reminding people who hadn't worked it out for themselves not to do things like have a barbecue outside on hot grass, on dried out lawns. I'm not a normal person. You've probably worked this out for a while. I don't know about you, but when that alarm went off, I think I was cooking at the time, and without even a nanosecond of pause, I don't know whether this goes back to my Catholic childhood, a lifetime of punishment and retribution. Without even pausing for a nanosecond, I thought, oh no, what have I done? What have I done? I'm in the kitchen. What have I done? I've never even recognised this sound. I've never heard this sound before. I'm absolutely certain that I've done something wrong. What have I done? Have I dropped the remote control down the toilet? Have I left the fridge door open? It's not the bloody car alarm. What have I done? An alarm goes off in my life. I don't know if you're like this. I don't know if it's a form of neurodiversity or a consequence of Catholic guilt. I don't know what it is. But when an alarm goes off in my life, I don't think, oh, I better be careful. An alarm's gone off. I think, oh no, what have I done? Is that hypervigilance? I don't know what's even going on there. But that's what I thought. I thought, oh no, what have I done? They were designed, of course, and some people were creatively willful in pretending not to understand this, not to tell you, who doesn't need any warning at all about how to behave, but to tell all the people who do need a warning. So you can't really have a debate about it, can you? Because it's a warning for people who need a warning. And just because you don't need a warning doesn't mean that other people don't need a warning. Why would you not? Why have you not? Why did you not have a barbecue? Spark up a disposable barbecue at the local park and leave it smouldering on the ground? Why don't you sit in a pub with your laptop open and no headphones on watching a film? Why don't you do that? Do you know the answer to that question? Why don't you do that? So I'm going to try and answer that question. The reason why I don't do any of those things, although I did ride my bicycle on the pavement a couple of times when the kids were young, and I had one of those Dutch cargo bikes with them in the front of it, because I had to get from the road to the place where you park your bike, and the place where you park your bike is always on the pavement. But I was very, very conscious. So I stopped pedalling and just sort of scooched along on my feet, because I think I was very conscious of upsetting other people or disturbing other people. Why don't you do these things? Answer: because you don't want to disturb other people. All right, why don't you want to disturb other people? See, it's worth thinking about these things. You want to unpack these kind of changes in the way that our society is behaving, the way that we are behaving. You need to get down to brass tacks. So we think we know why we don't do that, right? And we think that the reason why we don't do it is because we don't want to disturb other people, right? Or upset other people. Why don't you want to disturb or upset other people? I do it for a living. I love disturbing and upsetting some people in some contexts. But in the context that we've talked about, not wearing headphones on public transport, letting your children skip school, riding electric bikes through red lights on pavements, using temporary barbecues during a heat wave and literally starting wildfires, or at best risking a wildfire, you don't do those things because you don't want to disturb or upset other people. You don't want other people to look at you and think, like, what an idiot, what an arrogant so-and-so. But why don't you want that to happen? Why do you care? And the answer is because of how that makes you feel. Right? I don't want to feel the way I feel when someone disapproves of me. I don't want to feel like that. I don't want to feel the way I feel when I have disturbed or upset people. I don't want to feel a curious combination of shame and guilt. Right? What else? I mean, you might have other answers. In fact, we'll stick them on the list, Keith. Why don't you do these things? 0345 606 0973. Answer: I don't want to disturb people. Why don't you want to disturb or upset people? People disturb and upset you all the time. Why shouldn't you join in? If you can't beat them, join them. But the answer, I think, is a mixture of shame and guilt, which is why this Telegraph writer today, sounding a little bit Victorian by his own admission, bemoans the death of shame and writes that we are now a society without shame. What is shame? If not an uncomfortable feeling that you have done something wrong. And that is why you don't watch videos on the bus with the sound on full. This is why you don't weave through pedestrians on a pavement while riding an electric bicycle. This is why you did not spend the weekend setting fire to fossil fuels in the park, knowing full well that we were in a season of unprecedented wildfires. This is why you don't take phone calls in the pub or on the bus at full volume, despite the fact that the top deck is full and literally nobody wants to listen to your conversation. What has happened to us? That's all. Because it's happened to all of us. I wish I could sit here and pretend that it was a problem among the young, but it isn't. Racists would no doubt love to pretend that it is a problem exclusively among people who were not born here, perhaps, or people from communities and backgrounds other than their own. But as with all racism, that's a lie as well. I don't think that it is even a class issue. I'm thinking about the people on the buses having conversations, and it's just as likely to be somebody who sounds like a West London estate agent as it is someone who sounds like the Lost Mitchell brother. I live in London. Obviously, if you don't live in London, you'll be thinking of other cliched accents. You might be going for Miss Jean Brodie on the one hand and Rab C. Nesbitt on the other. It's not class, it's not age, it's not culture, except insofar as it is the culture in which all of us live. This is now our culture. If you've got a Telegraph columnist talking about a societal problem rather than trying to blame it on immigrants or black people or wokeness or, I don't know, climate change. No, they would never blame anything on climate change because that's something that only some people agree with. But if you've got a Telegraph columnist, something's happening at the Telegraph. I know I'm a bit geeky and anaraki about this, but they got a new owner and they're really shifting. They had 4,000 words yesterday attacking the Great Replacement theory as a load of old racist bunkum, which of course it is. But it was a load of old racist bunkum when the Telegraph was paying people to write about it and treating them like the Messiah. Just me, Anorak, Fleet Street Anorak, son of a newspaper man. Just keep an eye on that, though, because it's really interesting. They're trying to rejig, trying to recalibrate, presumably because instructions have come down from a new owner, which means the day of the unhinged headline, the end of the unhinged headline may be nigh. We'll have to rely on the Mail and old Dickie Littlejohn to keep the madness coming, won't we? Why don't you do it? Shame. So what's changed in society and why has it changed? I'm going to give you obvious answers. Boris Johnson and Donald Trump behaving with absolute impunity. Nigel Farage lying, even about whether or not he was warned by the police not to attend his own election victory. The way that some public figures have behaved with impunity, and a lot of you are going to think at this moment about Jason Arday and the fact that he wasn't allowed to behave with apparent fallibility in public life. I don't think there's any mystery anymore about what it was about him that excited so much determination to bring him down. He wasn't allowed to be fallible in public. Ian Duncan Smith had a CV full of nonsense. They made him leader of the Conservative Party. Nigel Farage was lying about the police last week. It's already moved on to the next load of nonsense. Donald Trump lied over 30,000 times in his first presidential term, as we were just reminded from the Netherlands. And we think that we're allowed to tell some kid on a bike or some young mum on her phone on the bus that you need to think about the rules that bind society or care about your community. Do me a fudging favour. Honestly. Oh, you better get off the pavement on your bicycle. We're just going to go and bomb Gaza. I don't normally like people who bring the Middle East into absolutely everything, but I don't know what the relationship is between personal conduct and public life. But that's my starter for 10. I think there's a link. What do you think explains this? Why is there so little shame left in our society? What has changed since, what should we say? What point would you pick? Oh, Lord, we're going to pick 2016, aren't we, Keith? It's not 2016. Is it 2016? Was 2016 the point at which you could be in public life, lie through your teeth and not suffer any consequences at all for it? In fact, you could even win a referendum. OK, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll do what we always do. We'll ask you when it started. So no one can dispute the decline, right? You recognise what we are describing. Some of these behaviours are not even linked to technology. Riding bicycles on the pavement when I was doing my cycling proficiency test at Stourport Police Station in about 1984, one lad got collared. About third day in, Saturday morning, one lad got absolutely collared by the copper who was running the cycling proficiency. He went, "Oi, you, Simon, over here." And Simon's like, What? You go, where were you? Where were you last Tuesday afternoon? And he'd seen this lad riding his bicycle on the pavement in Stourport. And he'd remembered, and he'd thought, he's on my cycling proficiency class. I'm going to scare the life out of him on Saturday morning. And I bet that Simon never rode on the pavement again. And these days, everyone's at it. What's changed? What has changed? And when? This might be even more interesting than the what of it. When did the change begin? 0345 6060 973 is the number you need. It's 20 past 11.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It's 22 minutes after 11. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Hey, come here a minute. This is funny. I'm about to ask you something you can't answer. Do you remember when I said, I've told you this story probably 763 times because I think it's hilarious, when I nearly did a phone-in about people not having phones. I'm reading the story in the paper. I cut out the little stories before I come in. Look, that's today's selection. I'm not even exaggerating. Oh, what are we going to do next? And there's a story about the number of people who don't have a phone. They don't have a mobile phone or a landline. And I've cut it out of the paper, and we're hitting, like 2 minutes to 12 or something like that. And I'm thinking, what are we going to do next? I'm going through little bits of paper. No, we can't do that. Did it on Monday. Can't do that. They did it. It didn't really work very well on that show. That's in your judge. Well, blimey. Imagine living with... Can you imagine what it would be like not to have a phone? But how do you do stuff? How do you even... Boof. I'll tell you what, give me a ring now if you haven't got a phone. Yeah, anyway, we won't be doing that as a phone. So now I'm about to ask you whether or not you think that the show has been improved today by the fact that you can't text me. So quite often I'm talking to you. If you ever watch it back, the video of the show, you probably see my eyes going there. I don't know if you... And I'm talking to you, obviously. Not great at eye contact at the best of times. But anyway, I'm talking to you, and my eyes are going there, and I'm talking, and I'm obviously making sense, and I'm flowing a bit. And then perhaps I just... pause in a way, and God Lord, I don't think I would be physically capable of doing that, but thanks for getting in touch. Or you just write something brilliant, and I think, I better just pretend that I've had that thought and work it in. So I've got like 2 plates spinning. There's this plate, you, and then there's that plate there, and sometimes I've got to go, excuse me a minute, I'll just keep that one spinning, I'll just head over. Have you picked up on that at all today? The fact that I seem to be in a slightly different presenting mode because I'm not distracted by the texts and WhatsApps that you would have to be able to send me in order to answer the question that I've just asked you. Trying to make Stuart Lee proud with that little mental journey because you can't tell me, ever. I suppose you could blue sky me, but don't, because we're too busy dealing with the phone-in topic, which is, where did all the shame go? Whatever your favourite bugbear is about antisocial behaviour, you would have to acknowledge, from shoplifting to people having speakerphone chats on the bus, it's a heck of a lot worse than it used to be. I want to know why. And I also want to know when. Ben's in Barnet. Ben, what would you like to say?
Hello. So I think that the answer to this is fairly simple, which is you can very neatly plot the degradation of local communities and real community life over the last 20 years with the increase of the fallacy of social media communities. And when I no longer see my neighbours, the people on the bus, the people on the train, as people as part of my community, people that I support and support me, people that I'm empathetic for, then suddenly I stop thinking about everyone around me, and suddenly my behaviour becomes very individualistic rather than thinking about wider society.
Atomized. How old are you?
I'm 21.
So it's all your fault then?
Yeah, basically.
So from pretty much the moment you were born, society was on a downward trajectory.
Yeah, it was my birth that triggered it.
That's okay. I mean, at least you're being honest about your... but the problem is, and the reason why I asked your age, and I hope you don't think it was rude, was because you don't know anything about the world that you're harking back to, mate.
Yeah. But I mean,
What do you mean, yeah?
Well, no, what
I was expecting a little bit more pause and reflection.
Well, no, but I'm a medical student. I spend a lot of time speaking to the elderly, and I see the older generation as the people that are wise, the people we should respect.
Yeah.
And they tell me
really?
their only
What about Brexit?
their only interaction is in the supermarket shop. When community fabric completely disintegrates between us, it's no surprise that people's behaviour.
Well, then why? I mean, you're probably onto something, and I don't know that this is even a pertinent response, but it's still minorities, isn't it? It's still 10 to 20% of people who are behaving like this. 23% think shoplifting isn't a serious crime. When I was a kid, it would have been between 1 and 5%. So it's not everybody, and yet everybody has lived through what you described. But I don't really like motoring topics, Ben. I don't know if you're aware of that on this programme, but I have a theory. So I'm 32 years older than you, and we did have conversations when I was your age about the decline in what was called community spirit. And do you know what I blamed then?
Yeah, what?
I've given you a massive clue.
Cars?
Correct, yeah. Because when Mum started driving me and my sister to school, when we were little, she didn't have a car, and school was within walking distance, and many of her closest friends now were friends that she made waiting at pick-up time, waiting to pick us up from school at the school gates. And then when she got a car, when we were a bit older and we were going to different schools, she would drive. I mean, eventually I was at boarding school, so that one goes out the window entirely, but she would drive to school and she'd sit and wait in the car for my sister to get in, or she'd sit and wait at where the school bus stopped. So everybody having cars, families having 2 cars, to me, contributes to what you describe, but that's been going on since the 1970s, so it doesn't explain what's happened more recently, and that's where you move ahead of me, don't you? Because social media possibly fits the time span of what we're discussing.
But I think I'd go further and say I think in the last 20 years you've reached this tipping point where your average person can go their entire day without having a real conversation with a real person. So if basic communication has completely subsided, it's no surprise that communication norms and behavioural norms are also subsiding.
Yeah, so you do your shopping online, you do your socialising online, you can
work online.
You can do everything online. So you get on a bus and it doesn't cross your mind that there's something inappropriate about having a conversation with your mum in full volume that everybody else on the bus can hear. Even when, because these people are on the bus every day, Ben. It's not as if they've never travelled by bus before, and so they're like behaving in an alien fashion because it's all so unfamiliar. And they know that doing what they do is rare. So that calculation, that internal dialogue that we all have, if you arrive somewhere new, it's why when in Rome, do as the Romans do is a flipping proverb, isn't it? Because I'm not quite sure how to behave. I know what I'll do. I'll look around at what everybody else is doing and I'll copy them. So the people doing all of the things that we describe are not doing that. They're not sitting in the park thinking, why am I the only one who's just set fire to a barbecue? Or why is there no more bicycles on the pavement? Or why am I the only one having a full volume conversation on the top deck of a bus? So we've also lost the ability to simply watch and learn, I think. But
I'd say especially young people have grown up in a world where everything is about them. Their social media feeds are tailored to them. Their Twitter feeds are echo chambers. It's no wonder that they then don't look around and consider the feelings of other people because they've grown up in such an individualistic
so that works
world.
For your generation. It doesn't work for mine.
That's where I struggle.
Yeah, that's where I struggle as well. I think your theory fits perfectly for what is your generation? What's it called?
Oh, you're asking the wrong person. I have no idea.
Good for you. Let's keep it that way, Ben. Let's promise each other we will never know what the shorthand generation is for people of your 21 years. Brilliant stuff. I hope you call me again. The fruits of your learning next time, as opposed to your brilliant amateurish social by amateur I just mean unpaid social commentary. 11:30 is the time. Actually, that was the fruits of his learning, wasn't it? Because he said as a medical student he's spending a lot of time with older people and having conversations with them about social change. But you know and I know, you'll be sitting on the bus, someone's going away, 10 to the dozen, full volume. You can hear what the person on the other end of the phone is saying as well. And you could not confidently predict their age. Not confidently. There might be a spread, but it's not going to be everybody. No one over 30 would ever do that. Here's Dominic Ellis with your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It's 11:33. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. I love this from Dom. It's Crocs, James. C-R-O-C-S. Ever since adults started wearing Crocs, that's when shame died. I've been saying so for a long time. They are a warning to future parents to be careful what you normalise. Now, I presume he's joking. But what was I seeing the other day? I saw David Mitchell, I think. I only saw a clip, but I think it was probably on the new programme about sitcoms that Joe Wilkinson is doing with David... Is it David Edgar? I think it's Edgar. And David Mitchell, who's about probably my age or a little bit younger, was wearing a shirt and tie. And... I'm going to go full Victorian now, aren't I? My late father would really rarely be seen not wearing a shirt and tie. Not a full suit, but just a tie was what you wore when you went out of the house. I'm thinking back to what Ben was talking about as well. And a sort of sense of decorum. I'm going to regret this, aren't I? But if you object to this thesis, you need to give me yours. Why are people behaving in such an antisocial fashion in social scenarios in ways that they didn't 10, 15, 20 years ago? It can't just be social media, because it's happening to people who were raised to know the difference between correct and incorrect behaviour. And I wonder whether the fact that we all dress like children now means that we somehow subconsciously think that we're allowed to behave like children too. And yet, of course, if we're adults, then there's no one there to tell us to pull our socks up and wipe our noses and behave properly. I don't know. I just because I have a slightly odd reaction to Crocs as well, as if adults have no business wearing these shoes, except at the beach, I suppose. So I see a man in Crocs and socks on public transport, and you sort of find yourself thinking, don't you have any self-respect? And then you sort of think, well, how dare you? Who are you pompous ass? Other people's sartorial choices. I've worn shoes in the past until literally the day they fell apart, in which case I'd pop down to the shop and buy some new ones. I am, even in these days of every minute of my life being filmed, I am by nature a very scruffy person. So what right have I got to object to Crocs? I don't know. Anyway, it was a funny message. I just used that as an example of me getting distracted by a message sent into the studio when I was in my flow. I wonder whether, perhaps you could text me if you could, but you can't, and tell me whether or not you think we should get rid of these kind of contributions to the programme permanently. I don't know. 11:36 is the time. Craig is in Keighley. Craig, what would you like to say?
Hi, morning, James.
Hello.
We've actually spoken before. You said that you'd sensed we might speak again, and here we are.
And here you are, you see. It's almost like I'm psychic.
Still slightly nervous, so go
It gets easier.
on
It gets
me.
better and better, I promise.
So I put some thoughts together, actually, while speaking with your researcher or producer. I was trying to explain how there are certain people in the public sphere, particularly politicians, who are setting a very bad example to us. And in that respect, I think we can tie this in a little bit with what you were talking about before previous conversation. But here we have, I spoke to you about Boris Johnson's appalling behaviour, and now we have other people in prominent places in politics displaying the same sort of behaviour. And these people have no sense of shame.
Which is what we're talking about. We are talking about shame. Why you feel what you feel when you do something that disturbs or upsets others.
Exactly. And they don't respect other people's boundaries. They have a lack of empathy. They don't care if they tread all over your boundaries because they don't really respect what you feel. They don't respect your emotions as a fellow human being. So when people... And I think also we're increasingly seeing characters like this playing prominent roles on in social media, as your caller before the news was talking about. So, well, I think... So
it doesn't... So, I mean, this is truth not mattering, but also appalling behaviour, not just not mattering anymore, but being actively rewarded, whether it's by public office or media acclamation, or whether it's by, clicks and likes, and in the world of Elon Musk, actual money. The more disgusting you are on Twitter these days, the more money you're likely to make. So why would being disgusting be frowned upon? Why would it be disapproved of?
Exactly, and it's money and power, but it's also attention. So a lot of these people who are in politics, they crave attention. And one of the things with Donald Trump that you were talking about before, if he has a pathological need for attention, or what they would describe in psychology as narcissistic supply. So I don't want to get into that conversation.
No, I don't think that the people we're talking about today are doing it for attention.
No.
Do you know what I mean? Now, they might be suffering from a form of behavioural osmosis almost, and just subconsciously thinking, well, hang on a minute, if the kings of the world can behave like that, then why on earth should I get off my bicycle on the pavement? And some people respond like that, and some people don't.
I get that. And if you have somebody in a very prominent position of power, so let's talk about Donald Trump, because he is, and so many people have said this, he's a pathological narcissist, and he's not just a pathological narcissist, he's a malignant, passionate narcissist, which is a horrible thing. So he displays all of these traits, but that's a pathological thing. But when you understand what's happening with narcissism, and there's more and more of it in society, you have to understand the difference between narcissistic traits
and a disorder, a personality disorder, yes.
So if you have a lot of people in prominent positions displaying pathological narcissism, it gives people permission to display narcissistic traits that previously they may have thought,
and this works.
This is behaving in this way.
This is a numbers game as well, because any diagnostic framework would recognise that only some people are going to have these traits and other people are not. So are we positing the possibility that most of the people who display the behaviours that are being picked up on in the Telegraph today by James Kirkup and by the owner of Wetherspoons as well with regards to phones, is that they are responding to a sort of normalisation of narcissistic traits by allowing their own to bubble to the surface, where previously social norms or the network of obligation which binds everyone else would have kept them below the surface?
That's a Boris Johnson reference, if ever I heard one. But yes, absolutely. That's exactly what's happening, I think. And it's being turbocharged by social media.
Have we had... I mean, I'm trying to think of another... For people who didn't get that reference, which I had a funny feeling Craig would. This is Boris Johnson's master at Eton writing to his father when Johnson was about 16 years old. I think he honestly believes that it is churlish of us not to regard him as an exception, one who should be free of the network of obligation which binds everyone else. And you'd need to be born into enormous privilege to pull that off at such a young age. But for other people who somewhere deep down inside believe that they should be free of the network of obligation which binds everyone else, the more of it they see going on, the more likely they are then to behave accordingly. So, bizarrely, there is a link between Donald Trump threatening to bomb the bleep out of Oman and... And, Billy Big Banana's sitting in the corner of a Wetherspoons having a full-volume conversation with his mum on his laptop, computer or phone.
Yeah, welcome to my world, James.
What you study, is it?
I don't know. I explained to you before, I've got complex personality stress disorder.
Yes, you're describing it to me as a patient rather than as a diagnostic.
I developed that through long-term exposure to narcissistic abuse.
Yes, I remember.
And so these things really stand out to me. Whenever I see them, it's my hypervigilance. I'm constantly seeing these behaviours.
Does understanding it so well help process what happened to you and the world around you, or is it just a hindrance? Is it a burden?
It certainly doesn't help with my anxiety about Donald Trump, because I think that he is at a very dangerous phase. He's realised the dreams of unlimited wealth and power that he's dreamt of all of his life.
It's still not enough.
And it's not enough. He still feels empty inside, but he's not going to want to give it up, not voluntarily. I don't even know where that is going to end. I mean, he's already starting global instability, massive distractions. So that doesn't help. I think the one thing that does help is it allows me to identify people who I don't want to identify with personally or have anything to do with, but also people I absolutely will not vote for. And before I go, can I just recommend an excellent book? I've been trying to turn you on to this for ages, by a guy called Bill Eddy. And it's
EDDY.
EDDY, and it's called Why We Elect Narcissists and Sociopaths and How We Can Stop. And
that's right up my Strasser. That's right up my Strasser.
Through a whole history of these people who have found themselves in power, and hint, it never ever ends well. So you'll recognise a lot of these.
Who does it begin with? Who's the first one? Do you know? Can you remember?
Oh goodness!
Don't worry.
I
look forward to reading. There you go. That's right, Keith. There you go.
Kicking in, but
Christmas
have a
list.
Read about it and have a
Hang
chat
on,
about it, and I'll give you a call in.
I look forward to it. Actually, I could listen to you all day. But you've preempted a question there, which I was toying with the idea of not asking you, but now I have to, because as you point out, the role models or the people that prosper, the people that rise to rule over us by dint of their narcissistic personality disorders have been around forever, and yet and yet we're discussing today a relatively new phenomenon.
Maybe you've also. I know you've read the Psychopath Test.
Yes, the John Ronson book.
The John Ronson book. I mean, nowadays they.
But why are more normal people behaving like this in public? If our main thesis is that they're following the lead of role models, and the book that you've mentioned proves that the role models themselves have been corrupting the public space forever. Because
it's cyclical.
Oh, all right.
So, Hitler was, who features prominently in the book, of course.
Well, you'd hope so.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't realise his ultimate dream of world domination.
No.
And society saw what had actually happened, and enough people said, that's enough, never again.
We don't want people like that in charge.
Drove these people into the fringes, but now, unfortunately, we're seeing them coming out of the fringe and being enabled by some very senior politicians, particularly here in the UK and in America, who are saying it's okay to behave this way.
Well, I don't think anyone can dispute that analysis on the contemporary political level, or indeed some of the echoes of the past, because you look at when terrible people are in charge and normal people then do terrible things. I mean, it is absolutely night follows day territory, especially if you're on side with the terrible people. I mean, this isn't about making phone calls on buses or having barbecues in the park. This is about behaving abominably in positions of power and responsibility, because the bloke at the top of the tree does. And lying. Did I see Kennedy talking about polio vaccines causing more polio than it cured? I mean, just straight up lying. How on earth can he get away with that? Because Donald Trump's his boss. Craig, stay safe. You're a fascinating man. It is 11:46.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 49 minutes after 11, and you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where, as my colleague Alwyn has just pointed out, we have managed to segue effortlessly from a conversation about phones in pubs to Adolf Hitler. And if you haven't heard the last 40-odd minutes of the programme, then you might balk at that. But it was the most natural progression in the world, wasn't it? A talk about the roots of antisocial behaviour at street level, tracing it back up to the top of the pyramid, the top of the social pinnacle, where you have throughout history seen sort of narcissists and sociopaths prosper. And when you're in the cycle, this is what the last caller explained so perfectly, when you're in the cycle, the bit of the cycle where the narcissists and sociopaths are prospering, then society will respond accordingly. So I don't know whether or not in 1930s Germany loads of people were, what would they be listening to, carrying transistor radios onto public transport and listening to them with the volume up, or bombing up and down the Strassers of Berlin on bicycles. I honestly don't know, but there must have been. I mean, I know they were chucking bricks through the windows of Jewish businesses and things like that, but that's not on the list of things that we're talking about. That's objectively obscene. But I mean, what we call low-level... I mean, what was shoplifting like in Nazi Germany? Probably you get your, metaphorically speaking, you'd have got your hands chopped off. So there was authoritarianism alongside narcissism. Now we've got the narcissism without the authoritarianism. And show me a narcissist who doesn't actually dream of being an authoritarian. And I'll show you someone who's probably not a narcissist at all. Wow. 11:50 is the time. Josephine is in Westminster. Josephine, what would you like to say?
Good morning, James.
Hello.
So I come at this from a very different perspective. So I am visiting professor in Kyoto. And in Japan, they have a very different idea about the individual in relation to society.
Yes.
So basically, here in the West, the individual kind of is supreme, whereas in Japan, the individual really doesn't exist without society. So in philosophy, the Japanese philosopher Wasuji Tetsuro basically said that everyone exists in a state of in-betweenness. So you are very much intrinsically part of your social network around you. And that really, I write about this a lot. I write about the Japanese incense ceremony and about the difference between Japanese fragrance culture and Western perfumery, which is all about this. And there's been lots written in about kind of from a philosophical perspective, an artistic perspective, and lots in academia about this. But it really permeates every aspect of everyday life as well. So in Japan, if you sit on the train, you will not see anyone on their phone.
Really?
Even just kind of scrolling, it's not a done
What do they
thing.
do in... forgive me.
There's a lot of people, old school newspapers,
Right.
reading books.
But that's
everyone is silent.
You
You don't take a phone call in public places.
Right.
It's just the cultural attitude to all of
But
these
it's still a
things is so
solipsistic
different.
pursuit, reading a paper. It's not like they're all having a chat about last night's football game, is it? They're not. I mean, whether you're looking at a phone or looking at a book, I don't.
No, but you're respecting other people's privacy. And also, the person next to you on the train is not necessarily, you don't know them, so therefore you don't necessarily immediately talk to them, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. Do you wear
you're
headphones? Will you see people wearing earphones on Japanese trains?
Not really. I mean, I kind of do because I'm always listening to an audiobook or doing something. So I suppose people listen to
my
music,
podcasts,
but
I hope, Josephine.
even music is seen as very much a social activity. So it's a shared communal activity. So all of the senses are really appreciated as a together with other people. I'm
getting there. I'm not. I mean, I don't know. I don't think you'd probably claim that this was a 100% thesis on what is going on. And I mean, so there's no antisocial behaviour really at all in Japan.
No, it's quite embarrassing to walk around the parks because in Tokyo especially, they have loudspeakers saying that people must take their rubbish with them, but the announcements are only ever in English and perhaps in Chinese because the Japanese have a very kind of poor view of Chinese people.
Okay.
And you get the feeling like the Japanese don't need to be told to take their
clean
rubbish
up
away
after
because
themselves.
people don't eat on the go, so they won't take a takeaway cup from Starbucks and just leave it in the park, or even start kind of smoking while they're walking and dropping a cigarette butt. They just wouldn't do that.
And you notice it in encounters with Japanese people, don't you? Whether you're in sort of social situations or restaurants or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
What's the word you'd use? Because I was going to say deference, and I don't think deference is actually the right word.
No, because it comes back to kind of respect for oneself as well. So it's just a deep humility almost, and not putting yourself above others, but understanding yourself in relation to other people.
There it is. Why? You've given us a great insight into the why of what we're talking about, but what about the when? Why do you think in the West, or in this country in particular, the decline in what we're describing has been so acute? When do you think that started? Because the when is the why in some ways.
For me personally, in the UK, it's the 1980s, and it's the rise of kind of American hyper-individualism and Thatcher's idea of there is no... I know she didn't actually say there is no such thing as society, but that was very much the zeitgeist of the 1980s. And I think that had a...
But she was actually defending your position when she said that.
Oh, completely. But it was the way it was interpreted.
Of course, yes.
Speaks volumes as to how society had shifted by that point, and the influx of American money and that kind of, enrichment. And I don't know really where that comes from. Perhaps it was something to do with kind of the post-war reaction, the fact that we were still paying debt to the Americans. We didn't have martial aid. I'm not sure. There
are parts of America that are probably more like Japan than the UK, though. Small town America where everybody is have a nice day. And, I was watching the first episode of the new series of Ted Lasso last night, and I know we shouldn't derive too much social commentary from fiction, but it reflects a truth about American society, small-town American society, where, you know, everything revolves around the high school and everybody knows each other and everybody's polite and the shopkeepers are all known by name, and that's less atomistic than the UK experience. Maybe it's
rooted in religion, though, isn't it?
Yes, it is
in
rooted.
those parts of the
Is
state.
it not in Japan? Is it not rooted in religion in Japan?
No, not at all. No, it's completely independent.
That's
I mean,
really interesting.
religion in Japan is a very, you know, everybody broadly agrees on believing in the same kind of things. Everybody will believe in the fox god, but nobody can tell you exactly what he means, and that's accepted. So everybody just accepts that they believe in the same thing, but that everybody will have a slightly different version of what they believe in.
I quite like the sound of that. Josephine.
So it works really well.
Yeah.
So they say you're born Shinto and you die Buddhist. So it's very much kind of just evolving. You kind of go with the
improvement,
go with the flow.
Self-improvement as well. What an amazing insight. Thank you so much. When do you go back to Kyoto?
So I'm currently writing a lecture. I have to give a lecture because I'm a visiting professor. So in November, but you'll be able to ring me. Do a master's at SOAS in East Asian History of Art and Intensive Japanese Language.
Marvellous. Well, good luck with it. I just wanted to check you'd be able to ring me. Well, I was checking you'd be able to ring me with such brilliant, such insights in future. It'd be rather harder to do it from Japan, but fantastic. Thank you. Oof. I'm now beginning to feel a little bit ridiculous about the plan for the next hour of the programme. We've just done some brilliant stuff on Trump. This has gone, as Arwin pointed out, somehow managed to go from people on the phone in Wetherspoons right through to analysis of Japanese culture and Adolf Hitler in the space of a single hour. And at the moment, because I am me, the conversation I want to have next is... Have you ever been attacked by a wild animal? I'll tell you why, if I don't change my mind. Pietro is in Tower Hamlets. Pietro, what have you got?
Hi, James.
Hello, mate.
I was just calling in with a theory from sociology called social practice theory, which I think goes some way to explain how the shift has happened rather than when. So the theory basically says that there are different social practices that define a context. Let's say there's ways of doing things in a particular place that are conventional. The way that they emerge is that at one point they're not conventional, and then gradually, if more and more people do them, the infrastructure of the place changes, and behaving in any other way becomes very difficult.
So it seeps. It's an incremental change until it is. It's like that line in Hemingway about going bankrupt first slowly, then all at once.
Yeah, but in some sense, I think if you look at it from the point of view of the individual, it means that the person has responsibility. Whereas if you look at all of this from the point of view of practice, it's about the way in which things happen. And the individual is more... they act as a consequence of having to accommodate for the normal way in which things happen, right? So if everyone's lying and you have a conscience and you don't want to lie, but everyone else in the world is getting it because they're lying, then you ask yourself, why am I not doing it? And why am I putting in so much effort into not doing it, despite the fact that it's not giving me any benefit, you know? So eventually... you
start lying.
Lies become commonplace.
This is the point, isn't it?
Of a conversation or of a social relation, you know.
If it provides profit, why on earth am I queuing? For example, would be if the more people push it. I think I get this. You're right. When you're on the motorway, and you're approaching a bottleneck, like a lane closure or something like that, and you're in the lane that is not closed, and people go past you in the lane that is closed because they're going to cut back into the traffic further. The more people that do that, the more likely you are to think, oh, well, stuff this for a game of soldiers, I'm having a bit of that.
Yeah, totally. And maybe in a slightly less visible way, if there's a charging port next to a bed, then why wouldn't you plug your phone into it?
Yeah.
But I think it's safe to assume that there are charging ports next to beds because of lamps. But the fact that we all have a phone and that we all use it all the time means that in the end the charging port is there for the phone.
There's a story years
ago. You're
in
bed looking at your phone rather than talking to your phone or whatever.
And so our behaviour has completely changed as a consequence of relatively small little acorn. There was a story years ago, I think it turned out not to be true, but I was fascinated by it for ages, about young people. When phones first became a thing, young people would ring doorbells with their phones because they'd stopped using their index finger. I don't know that I ever found any evidence for that, but I got a horrible feeling that I shared it on the radio on about 600 different occasions. Maybe it was true once in some small part of the world, but I don't think it has held true in the subsequent years. Very amazing hour of radio. Thank you so much. We'll end with Scott, actually, who has been in touch with an observation that knits together the entire conversation we've just been having. At the World Cup, James, he writes, the Japanese fans would stay after the game and pick up all the litter. Who else noticed that? Did anyone else notice? Did you notice that, Keith? Well, why didn't you say so? Could have told me, could have texted. Except, of course, you couldn't. As things stand in the next hour, because a bloke has been attacked by a stag in Richmond Park and has not suffered any serious injuries whatsoever, I think we might be able to have a conversation about the wild animal that attacked you.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It's 5 minutes after 12. We have discussed geopolitics and the state of the Middle East and in relation to the American presidency. We have discussed the decline of shame, the disappearance of shame and the rise of antisocial behaviour. There's not a lot on the domestic political agenda to get our teeth into today, and it is the middle of August, historically the period where the news agenda is at its leanest. So I'm going to allow myself a little treat. I'm going to have a silly phone in with you. Well, possibly not silly, but obviously I don't really want stories that end in death and disaster, but I do want stories that lead us perhaps towards the edge of it. Do you know what I mean? I talked a lot this week about fear. A lot recently about fear and the strange relationship that human beings have with fear. As in, we're supposed to hate it, but we do actually find ourselves quite liking it as long as we think that it's controlled. I'm going to ask you if you've ever been attacked by a wild animal. And don't worry, it's a topical phone-in. In case you're thinking of complaining, it's a very topical phone-in because they've just shot a stag. And listen, I'm not absolutely passionate animal rights activist, but neither am I anymore the kind of person who mocks people who are. I fully understand that the death of a stag can cause real emotional trauma to people listening to this programme and beyond. I fully understand that, and I would not want you to think for a single moment that I am making light of the stag's fate. A man in his 60s, I'm certainly not making light of his plight either, but the information we have is that his injuries were neither life-threatening nor life-changing. So a man in his 60s was taken to hospital on Saturday after being attacked by a stag, and the stag has subsequently been destroyed or put down or shot. I don't know what verbs you prefer. I'm not a big fan of euphemisms, so we'll go with shot, I think. The stag has been shot. The Royal Park spokesperson said, sadly, the stag's behaviour meant that it had to be put down as it was deemed to be a danger to visitors. So this is a part of town that I know quite well. There's something quite magical the first time you see the stags. Do you know, there's something quite magical the first time you see the parakeets in West London. You see these flashes of green dashing across the sky, and you think you've ended up in some sort of exotic parallel universe when you first see it, which for me must have been 20 or 30 years ago. And then fast forward to today, and they're a menace. The parakeets, they chase off the songbirds. You can't, you've just got that dreadful squawk all over London, or particularly West London, although they're spreading like wildfire. They're exotic as well. So something is exotic until it isn't exotic. If you lived in a country where things that we think are exotic were commonplace, like kangaroos are a menace in Australia, aren't they? Imagine if you saw a kangaroo hopping down your high street, Keith. You'd be excited, am I right? You'd be over the moon. Or you'd possibly be checking the contents of your coffee mug. Whereas in parts of Australia, kangaroos are a pest. They're a menace. So I don't know. It's a bit like weeds, isn't it? What's a weed? It's just a flower that someone doesn't like. Someone's decided they don't like that plant. Other people might be able to build a beautiful border with it. Anyway, that's not the point. Wild. Wild is something that we can agree on because it simply means not tame. So there are going to be two phone-ins running in parallel here. It could be that you were attacked by a wild animal that we would all objectively agree is a scary animal. And we will have a prize, except we won't, for the scariest? I mean, what would be the winner here? A lion. Would it? Would it be a lion? You've been chased by a lion, you've been attacked by a lion. I mean, hopefully it'd have a happy ending. Chimpanzees can be pretty vicious as well, can't they? But really scary. And then the parallel phone-in was being attacked by a wild animal, and people laugh when you tell them, especially if you were quite traumatised or even injured, as long as you're okay now. So a rabbit, for example. Has anyone ever been savaged by a rabbit? A wild rabbit? So the only thing that makes them wild is the fact that they're not domesticated. This is just simply wild, as in the opposite of tame. It has nothing to do with, safaris or anything like that. And I'm going to give you okay, this is important. I'm going to tell you a poor story now. So I'm going to tell you a 5 to 6 out of 10 story. I want you to listen very carefully to the tale of the time I was attacked by an elephant. Okay? And your story needs to be better than that. It needs to be funnier, or it needs to be scarier. So this is where we're setting the bar, all right? This is, cue the music, the time James was attacked by an elephant. And this is where the bar is. So your story has to be better than this. Are you ready? Are you sitting comfortably? Then I'll begin. So there I was on safari in Sri Lanka with my family. And I was quite excited to have seen all of these elephants. There were quite a lot of elephants around. They were, if you like, the banker on this safari. The leopard was the jackpot. You'd see the leopard, our guide told us, about once every month or so. There was only, they thought, one leopard on the territory. And if you saw the leopard, you were lucky. And this wasn't him trying to sort of drum up business, because we spoke to other people who'd been on the same safaris and they hadn't seen a leopard. I don't know why I'm telling you that, except to reveal that we did actually see the leopard. We glimpsed the leopard. I also saw a warthog that had been gored. I saw a warthog with a terrible wound in its side. I don't know what a warthog is. That's just like a hog with warts. Gored, as in, I think another warthog had done him with a tusk. And, you know, we said, is there anything we can do to help? And the guides looked as if we were nuts, because obviously nature, as many people have famously observed over the years, is red in tooth and claw. Was it Ted Hughes who said that first, Keith? I forget. Anyway, the elephants were exciting. They are, I mean, you don't need me to tell you, very large. And I was sitting in the back of the Jeep, minding my own business. Well, I was eating a boiled egg, actually, as it happens, that was in my packed lunch. Quite a nice boiled egg, as it goes. And an elephant's trunk appeared beside me. Listen, actually, before I continue, I wasn't attacked by an elephant. All right? It was an encounter with an elephant. This is why the bar is being set quite low today. It needs to involve an actual attack. It's the meaning of the verb attack. Have you ever been attacked by a wild animal? 0345 6060 973. I was nearly attacked by an elephant. That's the story, all right? I was nearly attacked. But I'll finish the story and you decide how much danger I was in. So, just gave me a bit of side-eye. So I was sitting in the back of a Jeep eating a boiled egg, and a trunk appeared beside me, and I thought this was hilarious. My memory goes a bit hazy here. I can't remember whether I put the egg, I think the elephant ended up taking the egg out of my hand with its trunk, and I'm giggling, and I'm in the back of the Jeep with one of my daughters, and my wife and my other daughter are in front of us, and then the driver of the Jeep is in front of them, and he looks over his shoulder, and he really panics. I should add, this was a bull elephant, Keith. It had whopping great tusks. And the boiled egg, the trunk, the tusks, the me, the driver panicked. I mean, he revs, he hits the accelerator and hits the side of the Jeep, like bang, 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 and drives away at great speed, and no one ever mentions it again in the course of the safari. I get back to the hotel where I was staying, and I'm having a beer in the evening with the owner of the hotel, and I tell him the story. He'd arranged the safari, and I said, it was amazing. I said, there were lots of elephants, and crikey, this one elephant came and took the boiled egg out of my hand, and he went, what? I said, the elephant took the boiled egg out of my hand when I was having my lunch. And he went, are you joking? Because you've got no idea how much danger you were in. Now, it occurs to me now, as I tell this story 15 years later, that he could have been yanking my chain. But I don't think that he was because of the reaction of the guide, who was clearly very, very... And what the fellow from the hotel said to me, he said, look, if that elephant, just for fun, it wouldn't even have been attacking you. So it's possible I wasn't even nearly attacked by an elephant. I was endangered by an elephant, Keith. Endangered by an elephant. If that elephant had wanted, it could have just flipped the Jeep over with its tusks. And he said that happens. That's why the driver would have panicked in the way that he did, because all it takes is for that elephant just to think, oh, that'll be fun, and just flip the Jeep over. He might even have thought he was playing with me. So I was played with. This story's just diminishing, isn't it? I was played with by an elephant. I was endangered accidentally by an elephant who wished me no harm. So your story has to be better than that, all right? That's all. That's the rules. That's the phone-in. Have you ever been attacked by a wild animal? 0345 6060 973.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 12:16. You are listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where we are making radio phone-in history. Nick did Have You Ever Choked this morning, and it was actually an absolutely fascinating phone-in. And it was inspired by important news about the number of people who don't know what to do if somebody around them is choking. But it is evidence, as I mentioned to Nick, during what we called the handover, it's evidence that it's August. So I'm doing Have You Ever Been Attacked by a Wild Animal? Because a stag attacked a man or approached a man in the park who was having a picnic and actually attacked him. And this also has a serious subtext to it as well, because Royal Park said, as Alan has reminded me in a message on Blue Sky, amid a surge in social media videos and pictures showing visitors feeding deer. So the deer, the stag in this case... do you know what Keith said when I said a stag has been shot? He said that'll put a downer on the wedding. In this case, the stag has clearly come to associate humans with food. So I know Richmond Park, I know the deer, and they are very shy. They don't really come near humans at all. And if you see someone trying to get a photograph with their child, you have that feeling. I wonder if it ties in with the last hour, actually, of what on earth are you doing? Why do you think nobody else behaves like this? You're endangering yourself, you're endangering your child. But if you're feeding the deer... And there's another story this week, isn't there, about influencers getting bitten by sharks. Have you seen this story? I'm not making it up. Unless I had a very vivid dream last night. I'm pretty sure I was listening to something on the radio about influencers getting bitten by sharks because they're trying to get photos, they're trying to get clicks, and they end up getting bitten by an actual shark. That would get on the board today for our Have You Ever Been Attacked by a Wild Animal phone-in? Yes, James, I've been bitten by a shark. That would definitely qualify. So the deer is associating the human with food, and that's really bad. That's really stupid behaviour, isn't it? And it's not the man who's got attacked's fault that he was associated with food by the stag. It's the other humans who've previously fed the stag. I thought we'd get Phillips on this hour as well. I mentioned to you earlier his observation about the declining nature of alliance with America, as in the declining strength of America in the eyes of its allies. I thought that was an insight so interesting that we should probably go back to the organ grinder rather than relying upon my second-hand interpretation of it. And Phillips O'Brien will be with us after the 12:30 news. So, in the meantime, fill your boots. Ian's in Ipswich. Ian, what have you got?
Hello, James. It's a bit of a step down from a shark attack, but this happened during the lockdown, which is relevant to the story. So we've got some dogs, and one of my dogs, Izzy, the greyhound, brought in a live squirrel into the house, still alive, and I thought I must rescue the squirrel. Yes. Which I did. But the squirrel... Well, I basically kind of prized her jaw open and then grabbed the squirrel with my other hand, which the squirrel then bit 6 times. You? Through the fingernail on my hand. Yeah. Sorry, I should have put a trigger warning there. Sorry, but very, very painful. They've got sharp teeth, squirrels. Yeah, really sharp. Very, very painful. Yeah. And when you say 6 times, was it like Yeah, it was like a frenzied attack. I think I can use that. Were you listening yesterday? Some of it. I was kind of in and out of my car. I didn't try and listen every day. Top of the show yesterday, I was talking about the moment when something moves from your head to your stomach. And that
the teeth, the squirrel's teeth going through your fingernail. That's the moment when this story moved from my head to my stomach. I felt my tummy go. Anyway, carry on.
So obviously, it's an animal, and I needed to get a tetanus jab. So my wife drove me to the local hospital, and this is, as I say, during lockdown. So she had to drop me in the car park. I had to go in, explain what had happened.
Was there a lot of blood or not? I don't know how much blood would come out.
There was a little bit of blood, but it wasn't not too bad.
But you need a tetanus.
But I need a tetanus jab. So they put up on the triage board in A&E, Mr. Noble, squirrel attack. Is what they wrote on the board. And they said, if you'd like to go and sit in that room on your... Because it was all to do with isolation. Yeah. So I was sitting in this room on my own with a mask on. I could hear the nurse coming down the corridor because she had the syringe in one of those metal kidney trays, and it was rattling because she was laughing so much. As she came down, she came in, she said, "Can you tell me the nature of the squirrel attack?"
Can you tell me the name of the squirrel? He might have form. We might have had his victims here before. And the reason is that they're not.
I shouldn't say this, but the next squirrel that she caught, I did not rescue. I'm afraid. I let nature take its course.
Yeah, well, you would.
She's only ever caught 2, for the record.
Yeah, no, and that's why there are not more squirrel attacks, isn't it? Because it would need to be brought into the house alive in order for a human to have any interaction with it whatsoever, because the squirrel was more freaked out than you were, hence the bite. I mean, that's why the squirrel bit you, Ian, and you didn't bite the squirrel in your defence.
No, but, the old adage of no good deed goes unpunished.
No, exactly. And how long did it take? What happened to the nail? Did it go black and drop off?
It didn't, but it was painful for quite a number of weeks. It was lucky it was my left hand and I'm right-handed, but it was painful for quite a few weeks.
Hard not to intervene because you just get squeamish about the dog doing what dogs do with squirrels. But there it is. There's a lesson there for us all. Okay, so that's a squirrel. That's definitely on the people. You tell people what wild animal they were attacked by. You were attacked by, and they laugh. I mean, in Ian's case. Literally. So we've got Ian Squirrel. Remember, on the other side of this phone-in, you tell people what you were attacked by and they balk. They goggle. They go, what? Wow, woo. A bit like my elephant story, but scarier. Jane's in Nottingham. Jane, what have you got?
Hi there, James.
Hello, Jane.
Not as dramatic as your story, but...
My story wasn't dramatic at all. It was just a big elephant. So in your mind... it reaches parts that a squirrel story can't reach. But Ian sustained a lot more damage at the hands of a squirrel than I did at the hooves of an elephant. The paws of a squirrel. Sorry, carry on.
Well, mine was a swan. I was in the park with my son in a little pushchair, and we were feeding the ducks, and then a swan jumped out from the water and started attacking the pushchair, so I had to turn that around really quickly, and the swan bit me on the derriere.
It actually bit you?
Yeah.
Gosh.
And,
well, you're lucky it didn't break your arm.
I'm just thinking... Sorry?
You're lucky it didn't break your arm.
Well, exactly.
You remember that from child? You remember that when we were kids, and your mum would say, "You don't go near that swan. A swan's wing can break your arm."
And I had that at the back of my mind, to be honest.
I bet you did.
And it was so I was just thinking, get my son up the bank, and then I fell over, and the swan just carried on biting my backside.
Really? Didn't move on to any other body parts or anything like that. It was just...
No. And then a member of the public came and shooed the swan away, and I was a bit shaken up.
You would be. Protecting its cygnets, I imagine. There was probably... Yeah. Was it that time of year? There was probably a nest nearby, and the swan was worried that you were a predator or something like that.
Exactly. But, so, yes, I had to... Gets worse, because I had to go to the doctors to get a tetanus.
Right, drew blood? The swan drew blood out of your bum?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jane.
Through my jeans.
Through your... Good Lord. I mean, I knew they had strong wings. I didn't know their beak could do that much damage.
It was, yeah. It was nasty, but it was more the shock of it that was... Anyway, so I had to go to the doctor, and the GP said, I said, I need a tetanus. I've been bitten on the bum by a swan, and he said they are bottom feeders.
We like him. Oh, dear, I thought he was going to say that's a George Formby song, but that's much funnier. Lovely. Well, and you lived to. I suppose it was sitting down was difficult for a few days, was it?
Yeah. And to be fair, I never went near. I didn't see this swan.
And your son was too young to. Your son was too young to appreciate the comedy.
No, but he just dined out on it now.
It's a great story. I mean, it is a great story. 25 minutes after 12. So we've got a squirrel and a swan. It's not, I'm looking for something a little bit more. Something you might meet in a zoo. Do not message me to say that there is a squirrel in your local zoo. And also, don't message me to say that elephants don't have hooves. Actually, you can message me to say, the messages are back open and I'm getting distracted. We're going to have a chat about this after the show, aren't we? Should we find? Because I think when I'm not getting distracted, the show is better. And yet I love seeing your messages every day. How are we going to negotiate this, kids? Should we have a team meeting? Team meeting? Everyone, team meeting? Team meeting? Not now, we're still on the radio, but at some point this afternoon, after I've written my newspaper column. Jenny's in Barnet. Jenny, what made you pick up the phone?
Hi, I would normally call about something political, so I can't believe I'm calling about this. But
that's all right. I'm presenting it.
I know. I was visiting my family in Sweden last week and got bitten by a viper.
Whoa! Really?
Yes.
Last week, so you're winning for like currency, I suppose.
Yeah, I just got back to London yesterday, actually. Yeah, so I got bitten by a viper and went into anaphylactic shock and had to go to hospital and get an antidote serum and
would everybody go into anaphylactic shock?
No, actually, about 1/3 of viper bites are so-called dry bites, so there's no venom.
But I mean, if anybody got a venom, they'd need. It's not that you had a particular susceptibility to viper venom or anything like that.
Not that I know of. It was my first time, so
what happened? Where were you? Were you just out for a walk, or?
I was in my parents' garden in Sweden, in a rural part of Sweden where there's a lot of vipers. And I was wearing sandals and didn't notice, and it just bit me.
I didn't know vipers were a thing in Sweden.
Well, that's what everybody says, so I thought I'd call in and say they are a thing. They're very common, actually.
Well, I never.
But,
I mean, I don't want to make light of anaphylactic shock, obviously, because it's no fun at all. But what I mean,
it wasn't
what happened?
then. Now it's fun. But
do you fall over? Do you sort of froth at the mouth? What happens?
At first, it just hurt a lot, and
so you go, ow!
Yes, I was screaming and cursing very loudly.
Yeah, in Swedish.
Yes, actually, yes. Yeah, and then my dad called the paramedics, and they came very quickly.
Yeah.
And they said, we just want to observe you. And I said, it just hurts like hell. But then...
Did they say when they arrived, did they say, humor du?
No, they did not.
Oh, well, because they knew. They knew you'd been bitten by... They knew exactly... Yeah, carry on.
No. And then after about 10 minutes, I started to, get really nauseous. And, you can throw up from it. And then I went in... It just started swelling up. Like my airways.
Oh, so that's why they were watching you, in case you had this reaction.
Yeah. And so then they took me to hospital where I had antidote serum that they give you.
And they have it on. I mean, you probably wouldn't have it at my local hospital.
No.
But obviously at Swedish hospitals, this is a regular occurrence.
Yeah, this is a rural place, so they had it. But it was.
So it's 2-1. It's 2-1 now from the 2 to the people who get laughed at when they tell you what bit, and 1 to the people who get kind of goggled at, or the people who got attacked by something you might find in a zoo. You're the first on the score sheet for the second team there. Jenny,
all right.
Well played.
Okay.
Great stuff.
Thank you.
Before you go.
Yeah.
Humor du?
Jag mår bra, tack.
It's 12:30. Matt Hewitt is here with your headline.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It's all about the influencers, isn't it? So the stag in Richmond Park attacking a man because influencers or people looking for social media content have been feeding the deer. And the story about sharks that I stumbled across yesterday and completely forgot to weave into this conversation is all about influencers. I heard one of them being interviewed saying, "Oh, no, I don't do it for clicks and attention. I do it to draw attention to the plight of the shark." Okay, you don't. I mean, I'm no David Attenborough, but you don't need to jump in the sea and get bitten by a shark to draw attention to the plight of a shark. Influencers. It's going to be another thing, isn't it, that we add to our list of things that we talk about with increasing frequency. Phillips O'Brien is the Professor of Strategic Studies at the University of St Andrews. Are you an influencer, Phillips?
Maybe.
A war influencer? I
have no idea. Sometimes people call me a correspondent now, and I'm like, I'm just an academic. So I'll stick with that.
Just an academic. Okay. Well, you're also someone who steers us through choppy waters on matters geopolitical, and there are two today before us. Let's get the first out of the way first. I don't know if arrogantly is quite the right word, suggested to my listeners earlier that and Christopher Steele confirmed this really in Dominic's news bulletin, that some of the coverage of British-made drones being used in Ukraine and the Russian embassy rattling its sabres in outrage may be a case of sound and fury signifying nothing very much.
Yeah. I mean, the British, by the way, have given the Ukrainians weapons for years now, which have been used to attack into Russia, most prominently the Storm Shadow Scalp cruise missiles. So the idea that a British-made system would be used to attack into Russia is actually nothing new. And by the way, they were very effective and attacked a number of very important subjects. So I think this is just the Russians making an issue out of something new, and they do like to attack the British for being particularly their enemy.
Or possibly the drone manufacturers having a rather good public relations department.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is actually something that the British have not been able to hand over that many weapons to the Ukrainians recently, because they don't actually have that many weapons left that can be handed over. So this is a way for the British government and the MOD to say, look, we really are helping, and British industry is playing a role in helping Ukraine fight the war. So there is a PR element to it, but it's also good. And by the way, Britain probably needs a drone industry. Yes. If you don't have a drone industry, you are going to be left behind in strategic developments in the coming years.
And speaking of former powers or great powers suffering from a shortage of ordnance or a shortage of weapons, it was a Blue Sky post that you put up about a day ago, about roughly this time yesterday, that drew our attention while we were having a conversation about South Korea and Oman and North Korea and Donald Trump. And you wrote, people are overlooking one really important development happening in those states which were loyal and helpful US allies. It's not that the US is not to be trusted, is now spiteful and working with Russia, North Korea, etc. The real story is that these states are discovering that the USA is much weaker than they thought. And when you write, people are overlooking something, we get you on the phone.
I think people have been reacting to the United States over the last year and a half too defensively and too timidly, because for a while there, the U.S. is so strong, U.S. is dominant, Trump lifts a finger, we call him daddy, and that the U.S. is this force. But what have we seen? We have seen the United States spend $9 trillion on defense in the last 10 years and lose a war to Iran. And actually run out of weapons, advanced weapons, after only a few months of fighting. They're scraping the bottom of the barrel. They're sending the last aircraft carrier that was facing the Chinese is now going to have to be sent to Iran for a war the United States is losing. So these states that thought the United States was somehow this big brother there that could defend them and had this military that was unchallengeable are now faced by looking at what is a very weakened country with a military not nearly as powerful as the United States like to think it was. Oh. And they're going to have to recalibrate. And they are recalibrating by saying, the United States is just not the military force we thought it is. And it's now dependent on us to look after ourselves.
Do they turn somewhere else instead for protection or for patronage?
I don't know if they turn to another state for protection, but they have to balance their interests. So South Korea has to have a good relationship with China now. because the South Koreans simply cannot trust the United States to be their protector or indeed ally. I mean, South Koreans were always willing to fight for themselves. So it wasn't like the South Koreans were utterly reliant on the United States, but they believed the United States was a significant force in their corner. They now have to say, look, we have to assume the United States is not reliable. The United States is much weaker than we thought, and therefore we're going to have to deal with China more directly ourselves. So I think it's more that kind of relationship. States are going to have to downgrade their reliance on U.S. power.
So are we talking about a form of appeasement, right? Or they're going to have to try to keep China sweet in ways that they wouldn't have done previously?
They will probably have to trim their sails a bit, or in some cases, they might be slightly more aggressive. I mean, interesting to see what the Japanese do. That the Japanese, in many ways, have been quite timid for decades because they believed the United States was there to defend them. Right. Now that the United States cannot do that, the Japanese might have to undertake a pretty significant, and they are undertaking a significant military buildup and be more assertive by working with states like Taiwan to help defend them. So it's not going to go one way or the other, but it's going to have to be a change away from the USA.
And Donald Trump would probably neither understand nor care about any of this.
I mean, it is odd. He is doing whatever he can to weaken the United States. The Iran
By
war...
accident.
Well, I don't know.
No,
I mean, I don't.
We're here again. Here we are again, Philip. Here we are again.
I mean, I'm not a conspiracy theorist by nature, and I always downgrade conspiracy theories. But all we could say is, if America's enemies could have scripted a set of policies to weaken the United States, it's hard to see anything they would have left off from what Donald Trump has done. Amazing. That he has taken step after step after step, which have made the United States weaker and moreover exposed that weakness, made that weakness apparent to the rest of the world. I mean, they must have loved that tweet about North Korea the other night. I can't imagine, if you were China or Russia, anything that you would have liked more than Trump attacking South Korea and saying, I want to be friends with North Korea. I mean, it's just insanity.
To go back to the military sort of diminishment, would that have happened under any president? Or has there been a particular competence issue under this one?
I don't think any other president would have fought this Iran war and exposed it. I mean, in a perverse way, we could say Trump fighting the Iran war at least showed how weak the United States was and has disabused Americans from thinking they're as powerful as they were. But whenever Americans have thought of military force against Iran in the past, they step back because they were told, well, look, Iran might close the strait, and we don't have an answer to that. So what Trump didn't care about logic or didn't think through any negative implications of what he was going to do, and he took this risk and really exposed American weakness. But he has been president now for 6 out of the last 10 years. So if there's anyone who is going to bear the responsibility, he is president, and he has been president for 6 out of the last 10 years, and this shortfall has come out of the 6 of these last 10 years. And
then on the question of, I suppose, reassurance, and I mentioned earlier that it's a pretty grim scenario when the most reassuring thing you can come up with regarding a threat by Donald Trump to bomb an ally, moving on to Oman now, is that, well, he's done it before and he didn't bomb them then. Should we be reassured by that knowledge?
I don't think they can bomb Oman now. No. I mean, I think the U.S. is so weak, they can't actually go back to war with Iran. The worry they face now is that Iran might escalate. And the United States will be in real trouble if Iran escalates.
What would that look like?
It might be the Iran attacking the Gulf states. The real worry, the real scary prospect for the United States is not just Iran now closing the Strait of Hormuz. It's Iran attacking U.S. partners in the Gulf and the United States burning through more munitions to try and defend them. And by the way, failing to defend them in certain cases as well.
And that, of course, that's the missing piece of the jigsaw, because that explains why some of the Gulf states are not going to be dancing to Donald Trump's tune anytime soon, because they are fearful now of an invigorated Iran.
They're dancing less and less to Donald Trump and the U.S.'s tune. Most of the states, maybe not the UAE, but most of the states, Oman, Kuwait, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, if you look at what they're doing, they're actually hedging away from the USA. and not looking at the USA as the big guarantor of their security in the future. And that will have huge implications, because a lot of those states basically had a deal with the USA.
Yeah.
We buy your weapons, you give us security, as if that was a quid pro quo. But if they are not going to get that security, they're not going to buy U.S. weapons either. And a lot of things can change.
And then Donald Trump's commercial track record comes into play. And you look at how he's treated, quotes, customers, end quotes, in the past, and how much, I suppose you'd call it, after-sales service you might have expected from everything from the Trump University right through to his recent cryptocurrency adventures. So, I mean, would it be, Charlotte, foolish of me to say we're in one of those ratios? It's like 52% you can't trust America anymore, and 48%, even if you could trust them, they haven't got the wherewithal to come to your help anyway.
Well, I think that's right. The United States is not trustworthy now, but it changes on a dime. It has no loyalty to allies. In fact, in many ways, being an ally is the worst position to be in, because that means that Trump tries to take advantage of you. The more you're seen as dependent, the more he believes you're weak. And secondly, they don't have the military that can guarantee your security at present. So anyone who is basing their future security on a consistent, powerful United States is taking a massive risk. And by the way, European states have to wake up to that as well.
Well, that'll probably be our next conversation. Phillips O'Brien, Professor of Strategic Studies at the University of St Andrews. Thank you very much indeed. I resisted the temptation, because we all know the answer, to ask Phillips whether or not the vindication of Sir Keir Starmer's decision to go nowhere near this ludicrous business in Iran is growing with every passing week, but I think absolutely everybody knows it is, especially, I suspect, the people like Badenoch and Farage, who were jumping up and down insisting that we should have been doing everything we could to help the man that is now presiding over a collapse in America's military strength, peace or security, stability in the Middle East, and long-standing, not ancient, but long-standing alliances with countries like South Korea and Oman. It's 12:45.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 12:48, and you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where we veer once again from the serious to the silly, although I suppose there's always a possibility that a story that you ring me with in answer to the question of have you ever been attacked by a wild animal will not be silly at all. I kind of expect it probably will be. At the moment, it's 2-1. The team of people who have been attacked by wild animals and get laughed at when they reveal the animal that attacked them have got 2, even though they both got hospitalised. They're on 2. And the team of people who got attacked by a wild animal that should be in a zoo, that we would ordinarily only encounter in a zoo, as Brits, of course, because obviously if you're living in India, then there's going to be lots of animals that you encounter in the wild. But we in Britain only encounter in a zoo. They've got 1. So it's the squirrel and the swan lining up on that side of the pitch versus the viper on that side. At the moment, you'd probably back the viper, right? If you turned it into an actual fight between the animals on that team, the squirrel and the swan, versus the viper, how many bites can a viper do? Can it just do 1? Does it take a while to sort of recharge its venom? I don't know. I may never. Mark's in Hitchin. Mark, what have you got?
Where do you want me to start? The animal or the location? Give it away straight away?
The beginning. Yeah, just it doesn't matter. Just fill your boots. I don't mind.
So, we're cycling through Kenya.
Yes.
On a kind of a big trip that took me from the UK to Kenya, and we were in northern Kenya, and I was in northern Kenya, and in quite a remote place.
Yeah.
That normally most people aren't, and I was wild camping throughout that trip. And
so you're in Kenya and you just put your... Because Eleanor went wild camping on Dartmoor the other day and I was worried about her. But you're in Kenya, you're in Africa.
That's right, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, beautiful, absolutely amazing.
She woke up to a sheep screaming outside the tent.
That's probably pretty scary. Those sheep can make horrible, scary noises. Yeah, have you ever heard a sheep scream?
No, I haven't ever heard a sheep scream.
It's pretty bad.
Is it like the alert that went off the other night when the government were warning us all not to start fires in the fields? It is a bit...
No, I know. It's kind of a cross between a baby and some kind of like mythical animal having an attack of some kind.
Oh, because it will have an evolutionary purpose, won't it? And they've got horns. But anyway, you were in Africa. Where did you pitch? Or did you just decide, oh, that looks nice, I'll pitch my tent there?
Yeah, that's exactly how it works. You kind of cycle all day, you're a bit tired.
Absolute madman.
I mean, but before it gets dark, you choose a place that's out of the way of habitation because you don't want people seeing you.
Good advice there, Keith. If you're ever pitching your tent in Africa anytime soon, do it before you get dark, all right? There you go, carry on.
And found a nice looking spot in the bush, and you just pitch up. I mean, I'd done it lots of times before.
Were you on your own?
Yeah.
Was it for charity? I mean, this is quite a backdrop.
Yeah, it was for charity. Yeah, it's partly for you, isn't it? Because I'm doing it because I want to explore and stuff.
Oh, I get it. Okay, so there you are. You pitched your tent. You're in the bush.
Yeah, kind of minding my own business. So go to sleep as you do, and then in the middle of the night, I woke up to kerfuffles outside the tent, which you automatically assume is human, right?
Yeah, or a sheep.
Or a sheep, yeah, exactly. It wasn't a sheep this time. But you kind of think, okay, yeah, it's a human, because that's the biggest risk when you wild camp is humans, right?
We get burgled or attacked or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I unzipped the tent and went, oi, to scare these kind of would-be thieves away. It wasn't a thief. It was a lion, and it was staring at me in shock, and it had in its jaws my pannier, like my bike pannier, bag, and I was like, oh my god! And then the lion was a young male lion, moderately apparent. Right. It jumped on my tent and then me. I was inside the tent. Yeah. The tent turned out to be quite a protective barrier.
Really?
Because it kind of, nothing. This is what I'm calling. I haven't lost an arm or anything. Oh. I've got both eyes and all that kind of stuff.
You lost a pannier.
Yeah, lost the toe. The story didn't end there. So I lost the pannier, and it jumped on me. There was a bit of a more of a kind of a kerfuffle, which is probably an understated word for what was
it attacking you, or was it just was it as confused as you were?
I think, that very much, because I think, I've seen lions. I've seen David Attenborough tell me about lions, and that wasn't a lion attack as such.
Okay.
And then it got confused by the tent, I think, and then ran off with my pannier into the night. And there was me, kind of like 2 a.m, with got broken down tent and in a bit of shock. So I was like, right, well, what do I need to do? I need to go back to sleep. I need to get my tent working, because apparently that saves me.
Okay.
So I start putting my tent up and trying to, repair it. And then in the background behind me, I hear a kind of rustle of leaves. And the lion apparently hadn't been satisfied with my pannier, had come back. But it wasn't running at me, it was there.
Yeah.
And by that time, you carry like pepper spray to protect you against stuff like this. I turned around and had the pepper spray, and I was like, right, okay, it's coming towards me. I was in the tent trying to, and I sprayed the lion, but I hadn't used the pepper spray before, and it went in my face instead, which wasn't very nice. And so I turned that round and then sprayed the lion. And this worked, because it's very bad for animals. They obviously multiplied. And then the lion kind of sneezed a bit, stopped, and then ran off. And then I spent the rest of the night up a tree.
You took the words out of my mouth. When you started talking about fixing your tent, I'm thinking you should have climbed a tree. You're supposed to climb a tree, aren't you?
Well, they're all thorny. All of them are thorny. They're not. It's not like a nice.
Mate, I'd rather endure some thorns than a flipping lion.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. And then the lion didn't come back, but a few days later I ran into civilization, because I was in quite a remote spot. It turns out that area isn't normally travelled through by bike, because it's famous for bandits.
Oh, really?
And the locals said, yeah, but there are no bandits at the moment. And I said, oh, why is that? And he goes, oh, because there's a Manning lion that killed 2 of them a few weeks ago.
The lions ate them all.
Yeah, but it can't have been this lion, because I think I would have been a goner.
Oh, but, I was going to say, if it had been a lion attack, you would have been attacked, because I don't think there are many. There used to be a strip in Viz magazine called The Pathetic Sharks, and it was about sharks who were just rubbish at being sharks. I don't think you encountered a rubbish lion. You just encountered a lion that wasn't very hungry or didn't like the look of you for dinner.
I think so. It was definitely a young male lion, because I later went and worked a bit with lions later down the line, and it was moderately small. So one of the ones that I don't know much about.
I still would have backed the lion against you, Mark. No offence.
Yeah, probably.
I don't care what size it was. It's got my vote. So, and I mean, obviously you're quite you're not as other men, and when it comes to courage and things like that. I mean, it didn't traumatise you or put you off lions for life.
I mean, it was part of the deal, right? We knew,
I guess.
everyone, because there's a community of people that cycle like in those areas.
Right.
And you do a bit of homework and stuff.
Yeah.
I hadn't done enough, but so you carry the spray and you kind of try and be sensible. But hyenas are actually the worst, I think, for nighttime random attacks.
Vicious little so-and-sos as well. Do you still do amazing things?
I mean, I'm working on bikes. I love bikes, but I've got kids now and I don't have the time to do as much. But I will be doing that a bit more as they get older. I'll be taking them on trips.
Will you? Oh, how exciting. How lucky for them. Do they know the lion story?
They do.
I bet they do. I tried. Here's me giving an egg to an elephant once by accident. I was trying to impress. The kids were even there and they were gloriously unimpressed. But Mark, you're a star. What an incredible story. And of course that means it's now the viper and the lion versus the squirrel and the swan. It's game over, right, for the squirrel and the swan. They were never in with much of a shout anyway. Oof. Oh, I might have to have a lie down after that. Linda's in Farningham. Linda, what would you like to say?
Good morning.
Hello.
I've had 2 encounters with wild animals.
Oh, yes.
One was a deer in a park, and I was out with my toddler in a buggy, and this deer approached us, and I didn't have food for it or anything, and it just kept walking towards me, and then it just dipped its head and put my body between its antlers and flipped me up onto my back.
Were you scared?
Do you know, I was more worried about my child in the buggy.
Yeah, well, you would be. But what part was this?
It was in Sevenoaks.
Okay. Because if you'd reported that, they'd have put that stag down. They'd have shot him.
Well, so I hear, because of that similar thing happened in Richmond.
Correct.
It just backed off afterwards. It didn't continue to harass me, but it was...
You sound very relaxed about it. I presume you were a little bit more excited at the time. Or are you just a very sanguine human being, Linda?
Well, I was much younger at the time.
I don't think that makes any difference.
It was quite a long time ago.
All right.
But my next story is perhaps a little bit more exciting.
Go on.
It was the summer that I'd finished my O-levels, and I decided to get a job, as you do, working for a firm of taxidermists.
Oh, yes. Well, I mean, you say as you do. I think we'll go with as you did.
Well, I think, yes, it's not your average summer job.
Oh.
And I think my parents thought I was bonkers.
Yeah, well...
So I was working with this place, and it was a rather seedy back street off the old Kent Road.
Right.
I won't say any more about where it was.
Was it someone's dad? Was it a famous person's dad?
Possibly.
Carry on.
They had a library of stuffed animals that they hired out for film sets and things. But they also had a random collection of live animals.
Oh, ooh.
They had penguins and they had chipmunks. And then they had
penguins off the old Kent Road?
Yeah, and then they had this male pigtail monkey.
Right.
Well, pigtail monkey is like a baboon.
Yes. It's big then.
A big thing, yeah. And it got out. And it escaped from these premises, and it went over the wall into the backyard next door.
Yeah.
And there were 3 of us, oh, goodness me, the monkey's out,
Yeah.
We've got to catch it. And there was a chap with a dog noose, a long pole with a loop on the end, and somebody else had a net, and we scurried round next door and went into the backyard of the next door premises, and this monkey was in a corner on top of a log pile.
Good Lord.
Sitting there, sort of being excited because he was free.
Yes.
And I think I was very stupid.
Go on. Sheila's here now. We're going to run out of time.
I grabbed him at the back of the neck.
You mad woman.
And the skin was loose, and he swung round and he sunk his teeth into my forearm.
Good Lord.
And I had the weight of this big pigtail monkey hanging on my arm with his teeth in my arm. And at that point, my colleagues grabbed him with the noose and got him off me. And I had these 4 gaping wounds in my arm, 2 underneath where the bottom.
All right, I think you win, actually. I mean, you'd have thought the fellow with the lion would have walked away with the prize today, wouldn't you? But to be fair, he only really got sort of pawed.
I'm still looking at the scars on my forearm.
All these years later.
But to add insult to injury, it was the backyard of a little sort of shop.
Yeah.
And as we went through the shop, somebody grabbed a bottle of TCP off the shelf and poured it onto my open wounds.
That wasn't much fun either. No, I have to go. Seriously, I'm crossing my legs and cringe, or what's the word? I don't know, but I am out of time. Linda, what a great story. I mean, I love the way you went in with the soft one and then hit us with the winner. If you missed any of today's show, you'd go, stay on the line and tell Eleanor, because I've interviewed the child of that tax. I know I have, and I can't remember who it is. If you missed any of today's show, you can listen back on our free Global Player app or the LBC app, where you can also stay up to date with all the latest news, videos and opinions. As promised, here is Sheila Fogarty.
James O'Brien on LBC.